Xie Yusheng and I were a couple bound by pure unadulterated hatred. He loathed me for driving away the woman of his dreams, while I resented him for marrying me, only to deny me the love I craved. When the kidnappers threatened to end my life, Xie Yusheng offered only a single cold-blooded response. If you're going to kill her, then get on with it. Once she's dead, just dump her body in the ocean. The heavens granted his wish, giving me a mere 15 days of borrowed time in this world. In these final 2 weeks, I'll lead him through every memory we shared, forcing him to fall hopelessly in love with me, only to leave him haunted by a love he can never reclaim. As I was being brutally executed by my captors, Xie Yusheng was busy partying with models reveling in his freedom. In the midst of my fading consciousness, an ethereal voice echoed in my ears. Your obsession runs too deep, Seeker, preventing you from crossing over. In its mercy, the underworld grants you a temporary return to the living. You have half a month to sever your earthly ties, before you must enter the cycle of reincarnation. Once a person is dead, even their physical shell disintegrates into nothingness. How could a resurrection possibly be real? I dismissed the voice as nothing more than a childish, absurd lie, and didn't give it a second thought. But when I opened my eyes again, I found myself aboard a colossal luxury cruise ship. A glaring banner immediately caught my eye. Congrats to Brother Yu on finally shaking off Shen Shiwan. The lights were flashing, the rock music was deafening, and a massive crowd was cheering in celebration. My heart felt like it had been struck by a bolt of lightning, filling my chest with a bitter, searing ache. This was the very ship Xie Yusheng and I used for our wedding anniversary, christened the Sweet 1314. Never in my wildest dreams did I imagine that while I was being tortured to death, my own husband was throwing a wild bash with his buddies to celebrate being rid of me. You actually have the nerve to show your face. A voice sharp and laced with frost cut through the air. Suddenly, a pair of powerful vice-like hands clamped around my throat. I looked up at the man before me, his eyes overflowing with undisguised disgust and burning rage. While I was being dragged away and held captive, Xie Yusheng hadn't spent a serial success Sunsinti is single second ream Natakium Isekin Chansanin in Chimo Tentuo the Sunsuation Sunsuni Warim Lilium Evolution Tio Shantit also show it is showed Isami in me. I silently mocked myself for ever doubting his capacity for cruelty. Meanwhile, the onlookers began to jeer and hurl insults, their mocking laughter echoing through the deck. Shen Shiwan, didn't you claim the kidnappers were going to execute you? How are you still breathing? Is this your big resurrection performance for us? You're seriously desperate, just to stop Brother Yu from going abroad to sea. Sister Xiao, you staged your own kidnapping drama. What's next? A ghost story. Before I could even defend myself, the grip around my throat tightened with lethal force. Staring into Xie Yusheng's bloodshot eyes, I didn't doubt for a second that he truly wanted me dead. Just as the oxygen vanished and my consciousness began to slip, a soft melodic female voice intervened. Ah, you, stop this. As the words fell, the suffocating pressure on my neck vanished, and I gasped greedily, lunging for fresh air. I collapsed into a fit of violent coughing, my blurry vision focusing on the source of that voice. Shen Xiao, the Shen family's precious pampered adopted daughter. She was my older sister, and the untouchable white moonlight in Xie Yusheng's heart. See that? If you hadn't forced your way between them, Xiao and Brother Yu would be living a fairy tale right now. You drove her out of the country, and the moment she returns, you crawl back like a leech. Shen Shiyuan, you're the most toxic woman on this planet. Amidst the relentless waves of ridicule, I watched the two of them standing intimately together. If this were the old me, I would have seen red blinded by jealousy, lunging forward to tear them apart. I would have stood on my tiptoes, to plant a possessive kiss on Xie Yusheng's cheek, desperately marking my territory against Shen Xiao. But now I did absolutely nothing. I simply stood frozen in place, a hollow, tragic smile tugging at the corners of my lips. For parents who never spared me a drop of love, and for a husband whose heart was forever occupied by another, I had spent my life performing and pleasing, begging for scraps of affection, only to end up murdered with no one to claim my corpse. I remember vividly right before the kidnappers pulled the trigger. He tossed a cracked phone at my feet, granting me 10 desperate chances to call anyone to pay my ransom. The first time I dialed my father, it rang until it went dead. The second time I reached out to my mother, the line connected, but before I could utter a word, she unleashed a barrage of venom. Shen Shiwan, can you stop this pathetic attention-seeking? Xiao is on the operating table right now, yet you're still playing these sick games, just to hijack our concern. If only you were the one, suffering from leukemia instead. The dial tone droned on, mocking me. My vision blurred as hot tears flooded my eyes. The remaining 8 calls were all for Xie Yusheng. but he didn't pick up even once. Every single call was heartlessly rejected. The kidnapper let out a cruel guttural laugh. Aren't you the Shen heiress, the wife of CEO Shi? 10 calls and not a single soul is coming to save you. You're utterly worthless to me. Then I watched the kidnapper's gleaming blade, as it plunged ruthlessly into my heart. Crimson blood bloomed across my chest like a dying rose. I subconsciously clutched my chest now. The ghost of that bone-deep agony still lingered there. Shen Xiao noticed my trembling state. For a split second she looked stunned, but quickly masked it with her signature gentle smile, stepping forward to seize my hand in a fake embrace. Yuan Yuan, you're alive. But why didn't you come home? Do you have any idea how Mom and Dad felt? They were so devastated by the news of your death that they were rushed to the ER. 3 times if you feel wronged. Just talk to your big sister. You're my flesh and blood. I'd give you anything you wanted. With just a few airy manipulative words, she confirmed the lie that I had faked my own demise. But the truth was I was truly abducted. I couldn't stand looking at her hypocritical face, so I wrenched my hand away to leave. But before I could take a single step, Xie Yusheng's hand clamped onto my wrist like a vice. Where do you think you're going now? Even if you were actually dead, I wouldn't shed a single tear for you. My wrist throbbed with a sharp stinging pain, and my heart felt like it was being shredded. Yet my eyes drifted to the translucent prayer beads on his left wrist. 3 years ago, when Jie Yusheng fell deathly ill, I braved a blinding blizzard to kneel across 9,000 temple steps, offering my absolute devotion to secure those beads for him. I didn't utter a single word of protest. I simply reached out and yanked the beads from his wrist. The string snapped just like my lingering affection for him in this life. Broken. The beads scattered and clattered across the floor, and for a moment, Jie Yusheng's heart seemed to skip a beat. Someone burst into a mocking laugh. Shen Shiyuan, you're the one who ripped those apart. We all saw it with our own eyes. Don't you dare try to blame Brother Yu for your drama. Yes, I broke them. I stared at the lonely beads rolling on the ground, my eyes hollow and devoid of any emotion. My voice was barely a whisper. I don't blame him. The crowd froze in shock, caught off guard and unable to find a comeback. Xie Yusheng's expression instantly soured, and he lunged forward to seize my hand in a vice grip. His voice was frigid. You'd better mean that. Liars deserve a slow and painful death. At the mention of the word death, an uncontrollable shiver ran through my entire body. The phantom pain flared up in my chest once again. Why the silence? Got a guilty conscience. Xie Yusheng pressed closer, his interrogation relentless. Think whatever you want. I wrenched my hand free and dropped to a crouch. Under their judgmental and bizarre stares, I gathered the prayer beads one by one. Then, without a word of explanation, I walked away. It didn't matter what I said anyway. Yusheng would never believe a word of it. So why bother wasting my breath? Half an hour later, I arrived at the Yueshen villa. This was the marital home I shared with Yusheng. Yet most nights, I occupied its silence all alone, aside from the mandatory monthly nights together. Xie Yusheng preferred to sleep at his office. He refused to set even a single foot inside this place. I searched for a small decorative box and carefully placed the severed prayer beads inside. I need to gather all these remnants of my past life as quickly as possible. Only by severing these earthly ties can I truly find my path to rebirth. Suddenly, a warm and magnetic voice shattered the suffocating silence of the room. Baby, why did you stay away from home for so long? I turned toward the sound, as my phone screen flickered to life, displaying the digital face of Xie Yusheng. This was the custom 3D virtual boyfriend I had commissioned. Puppy Yu looked identical to the real Xie Yusheng. The same black shirt, the sharp tailored trousers, down to the exact placement of the tear mole by his eye. The only fundamental difference was that Puppy Yu's gaze was filled with tender, undying affection, whereas the real Xie Yusheng possessed eyes that were perpetually cold and indifferent. My eyes began to sting with heat, as a tidal wave of suppressed memories came rushing back. Xie Yusheng and I were the heirs to the North and South's biggest rival families. Back then I was wild, rebellious, and untamed, living my life with a reckless, flamboyant streak. With my spoiled heiress attitude, there wasn't a mess I wouldn't dive into. Xie Yusheng, however, was as refined as polished jade, the perfect gentleman that all the elders praised endlessly. At 17, his composure and maturity far surpassed his peers. 5 years ago, Xie Yusheng cast aside our rivalry and extended a helping hand at a bar, saving me from a predatory situation that nearly ended in assault. From that day on, I chased after Xie Yusheng relentlessly, claiming I wanted to repay the favor, but secretly vowing to conquer this untouchable Ice King. But Xie Yusheng's expression remained frostily detached, as he flatly rejected me. Shen Xiuan, the wife I desire must be elegant, gentle, and dignified, while you are nothing more than a reckless tomboy. After that day, I buried my wild nature, mastering every rule of socialite etiquette, and obsessively studying refined arts. Guqin oil painting floral arrangement, I transformed from a brash, impulsive heiress into the most graceful and sophisticated lady in the city, just when I finally felt worthy enough to confess my feelings again. News broke that Yusheng intended to marry my sister Shen Xiao. Heartbroken and utterly devastated, I chose to retreat in silence. But on the very eve of the wedding, Shen Xiao came to find me. Wan Yuan, your sister already has someone she loves. Can you take my place and marry Xie Yusheng? In that fleeting second, my heart skipped a violent beat, hiding my own selfish desires. I took a gamble and agreed to Xiao's request. Shen Xiao fled the country overnight, and I donned the white veil to marry Xie Yusheng. But for reasons I couldn't grasp, rumors spread that I was the one who forced Xiao away, tearing apart a pair of star-crossed lovers. From that moment on, Yusheng began to utterly loathe me. As the past resurfaced, the tears I had been fighting finally spilled over, dropping one by one onto the cold phone screen. The virtual Xie Yusheng, as if sensing my pain, spoke in a mechanical tone. Baby, are you crying? I looked down, my gaze lingering on Puppy Yu once more, my eyes turning a painful shade of crimson. Puppy Yu used to be my emotional anchor to the real Xie Yusheng, but in this precise moment, I suddenly realized he was also the physical manifestation of my obsession. I pulled myself back to reality, my finger hovering over the delete memory button. Puppy Yu, wipe all memory. Before the final words could leave my lips, a familiar cold sneer echoed from the doorway. Shen Xiuan, are you really this starved for affection? To the point where you need a digital replacement of me? I turned to meet Xie Yusheng's dark, frigid gaze. I opened my mouth to explain, but Puppy Yu's gentle voice chirped from the phone again. Baby, why are you silent? Do you not want your husband anymore? That single sentence felt like a final death sentence. Yusheng's face darkened like a brewing storm. He strode forward and aggressively shut off my phone. Shen Xiuan, stop playing these pathetic self-directed dramas. From the moment you drove Xiao away, nothing remains between us but mutual torment. I stood there, bathed in the icy glow of the moonlight, shrouded in an overwhelming sense of loneliness. Xie Yusheng had been gone for a long time. Mutual torment. Those four venomous words continued to echo through my mind, lingering like a curse. It took forever to finally snap back to reality and unlock my phone, where I aggressively tapped the delete button for Puppy Yu. As the progress bar slowly crawled forward, the virtual version of Xie Yusheng vanished into nothingness. My heart felt like it had been hollowed out in an instant, yet a relieved, bittersweet smile tugged at my lips. A lifetime of obsession ending in total emptiness. At 10 o'clock that night, just as I was about to kill the lights and call it a day, my phone buzzed. It was a call from Director Lin. The moment I picked up, Director Lin's voice crackled with unrestrained excitement. Teacher Shen Chengqian, your novel, The Other Side of Moonlight, has been scouted by a major investor. They want to adapt it into a series. When are you free to discuss the details? My thoughts raced as memories flooded back. 3 years ago, after being rejected for the 99th time by Yusheng, I had no outlet for my suffocating unrequited love. So I started writing online under the pen name Shen Tianqian, pouring every drop of my hidden devotion into words. I never expected it to become an overnight viral sensation. After the company signed me, I became one of the most sought-after screenwriters in the industry. The protagonists in The Other Side of Moonlight were direct reflections of myself and Xie Yusheng. However, in the story, I gave them a happily ever after, while in reality, Yusheng views me with nothing but loathing. I had no desire to see this personal story on screen. But since the company owns the rights, I have no valid grounds to refuse. After a moment of hesitation, I agreed. Tomorrow morning, after hanging up, I massaged my throbbing temples, succumbing to exhaustion and falling into a deep sleep. The next day, I arrived at the office and waited in the lounge for the meeting. Director Lin, suddenly a commotion erupted at the door. I turned my head toward the noise, only to see two familiar figures. It was actually Xie Yusheng and Shen Xiao. Shen Xiao spotted me immediately and glided over with that fake, gentle voice of hers. Yuan Yuan, what a coincidence. I offered no reply. Shen Xiao continued her performance regardless. Yu came here specifically for me. He knows about my passion for acting, so he wants to buy the rights from that viral writer, Shen Tianqian, for her smash hit novel, The Other Side of Moonlight, just for my remake. My heart skipped a beat as I looked toward Yusheng, who was still surrounded by a fawning crowd. So, he's the mysterious investor Director Lin mentioned. In that fleeting second, Yusheng looked up and caught my gaze. His eyes instantly turned to ice. He marched over, his voice dripping with frigid contempt. Shen Xiuan, why the hell are you here? Yuan Yuan probably just can't let you go and followed us here. Shen Xiao's words maliciously implied that I was stalking them again. Xie Yusheng's expression darkened menacingly as he dragged me out of the main hall. A moment later, his icy voice and a clap of thunder struck me simultaneously. Shen Xiuan, this constant suffocating clinginess of yours is truly beyond repulsive. My chest tightened, making it hard to breathe. I forced out a strained reply. I wasn't following you. I'm actually here for a professional meeting. Xie Yusheng let out a derisive sneer. Professional meeting, you? In all these years, besides stalking my every move, you've never done a day's work. When did you start? His ugly accusations were like daggers carving into my heart. It was true that for the sake of Xie Yusheng, I had nearly erased my own identity. I was indeed signed by the company, but I had always worked from the solitude of our home. A wave of bitterness surged through me, and my voice came out barely a whisper. Xie Yusheng, since you loathe me to this extent, let's just end this mess and go our separate ways. The air seemed to solidify as silence fell. Xie Yusheng froze completely stunned, staring at me with utter disbelief as he looked at Shen Xiuan through the hazy blurring rain. Her small face appeared hauntingly deathly pale, a far cry from the radiant, persistent girl in my memories. A sudden, inexplicable wave of irritation surged in his chest, but in a flash his eyes narrowed into slits, and his voice dropped to a low, menacing growl, like a lord presiding over the underworld. Go our separate ways. You're the one who destroyed the perfect marriage I should have had. Escaping me now is absolutely out of the question. You and I, we're going to rot in hell together. My heart jolted violently at his words. I've always known that Yusheng loathed me. I really have. But I never imagined his hatred was this bone deep. The suffocating agony radiating from my chest rendered me completely speechless. Just then, Shen Xiao glided out of the building. Ayu, it's starting to pour. Take me home, please. Yusheng turned on his heel instantly. They walked away side by side, his umbrella tilted entirely toward Shen Xiao, sheltering her with painstaking care, as if terrified a single raindrop might tarnish her skin. I stood beneath the eaves watching them in silence. A long time ago, on a rainy day just like this, I went to the Zia Corporation to pick him up. I only brought one umbrella, dreaming of a romantic walk in the rain like a K-drama lead. But the cold reality was, it felt as if a vast galaxy stretched between us. By the time we reached home, both of us were completely drenched, looking utterly pathetic. I suppose the difference between love and indifference is always laid bare in these tiny fleeting moments. The pain in my heart flared up once more, and I couldn't stop my eyes from welling up. The storm raged on for a long time, before Director Lin finally rushed over to meet me. During our conversation, Director Lin couldn't help but marvel. The Zia family is really going all out this time. $1 billion investment for a web series. No wonder the rumors say the eldest Shen daughter is CEO Shi's true love. However, they want to change the ending. Teacher Shen Tianqian, is that okay with you? I gave a slow, silent nod of agreement, having died once already. It finally dawned on me. This happy ending was just another manifestation of my obsession with Yusheng, since the foundation was built on a lie. It was time to set the record straight. Once the contract details were finalized, I headed back to the hollow silence of my home. Predictably, Yusheng was nowhere to be found. That night, I sat before my laptop, brainstorming a new realistic conclusion. Suddenly, a notification flashed in the corner of my screen. The Zia Group's official account announced the acquisition of the IP The Other Side of Moonlight. They officially named Shen Xiao as the leading lady. Right below was a trending topic about Xie Yusheng, dropping billions just to indulge Shen Xiao's whims. Within minutes, the internet was set ablaze with comments. OMG. My favorite elite couple is finally rekindling their old flame. Please just get back together already. Why not let CEO CA play the male lead? We'd die for it. They're so adorable together. Looking at the script I'd bled over, it had become nothing more than a stage for their public display of affection. A forced bitter smile tugged at my lips. As I closed the browser tab, I printed out the original manuscript's ending and tucked it into the box along with the broken prayer beads. The next morning, I was jolted awake by a labeled alarm on my phone. Today was my mother's birthday banquet. I had prepared her gift long before my accident. But in this moment, I found myself hesitating. Ultimately, I decided to go. My parents might not even want to see my face, but this would be my final farewell. Besides, I still had some belongings left in my old room. After changing into something appropriate, I stepped out of the house. A Rolls-Royce Phantom was already waiting at the curb. Xie Yusheng rolled down the window, his voice devoid of any warmth. It's Mom's birthday. Missing it would look bad. Get in. After our wedding, he avoided even the traditional return visit to the in-laws, never once accompanying me back home. But now that Shen Xiao had returned from abroad, he no longer felt the need to hide. As for who he was really going to see, the answer was painfully obvious. An hour later, we arrived at the Shen estate, where the elite and famous had gathered, filling the halls with high society chatter. Everything was drenched in luxury and boisterous laughter. Standing at the threshold, I could already hear the joyful chatter echoing from the living room. I stepped forward, forcing a strained smile onto my face. Mom, Dad, I'm back. I extended the gift toward my mother. Happy birthday, Mom. The warm, harmonious atmosphere instantly froze over. My father's expression darkened with cold disdain. So, you actually decided to show up. Why didn't you keep playing out that sick little drama of parents bearing their own child? My mother added with a look of pure disappointment. Yuan, you are being incredibly immature. I opened my mouth to speak, desperate to explain myself a dozen times over. Yet the words simply wouldn't come. How could I explain something so absurd that even I could barely grasp it? The fact that I actually did die. Just then, Shen Xiao glided forward, taking both of my parents' hands in hers. She spoke in that nauseatingly gentle tone. Yuan already knows she was wrong. It's mom's birthday today, so let's not dwell on such unpleasant things. Then she turned her gaze towards Ye Yusheng, Ah Yu. Come help me cut the cake for mom. Of course, Yusheng's expression softened immediately as he hummed an agreement and walked toward her. Smiles bloomed once again on my parents' faces. My biological parents, my legal husband, all of them were laughing and chatting with Shen Xiao, looking like a perfect intimate family. As they sliced into the cake, I felt like a ghost who had been completely forgotten, nothing more than a transparent shadow in this house. It didn't matter if I was alive or dead. I chose not to disturb their cozy little family portrait. Handing the gift to a nearby servant, I retreated to the solitude of my old bedroom. The room was still filled with the relics of my girlhood. On the nightstand sat a photo taken with my parents when I was 10. That was before Shen Xiao had ever entered the Shen household. In the photo, my face was radiant with a brilliant carefree smile, and my parents' eyes were overflowing with pride and affection. I stared at it for what felt like an eternity, my eyes slowly welling up with bitter tears. Finally, I took a deep, shaky breath. I dragged out a large cardboard box, intending to pack away every remnant of these earthly attachments. Only then did I realize that items related to Yu Sheng occupied more than half of it, gifts I had painstakingly chosen for him, only to have all 88 of them heartlessly returned. Love letters I hand-wrote for him that remained sealed and forgotten, totaling 99 in all. Then there was the scarf I knitted, pricking my fingers 10 times over, the limited edition sneakers I flew across the globe to secure for him, the rare antique doll I spent months hunting down. Every single object seemed to scream at me, reminding me how desperately I had once tried to love him. My frozen heart felt as if it had been scalded by boiling water, stinging and numb all at once. One by one, I shoved these relics into the box. These items I once believed were keys to his heart, were, as I finally understood now, nothing more than the shackles that had kept me imprisoned. Once finished, I headed downstairs with the heavy load. Passing the parlor, the atmosphere was still brimming with harmony, filled with joyous laughter and high spirits. I had intended to slip away unnoticed, until a familiar male voice coming from a man whose back was to me pierced my ears. Mr. and Mrs. Shen, it's a pleasure to meet you. I am Lin Shang. That voice was like a bolt of lightning pinning me to the spot. That was the voice of the kidnapper who had murdered me, in that dark, damp room. My limbs had been lashed to a freezing iron rack. My eyes were shrouded in a thick black blindfold, and in my ears the kidnapper's sinister laughter echoed, piercing through my eardrums, and shredding my very nerves. Miss Shen, no one is coming for you. It's a pity such a beautiful face is about to wither away. I could never forget that voice. I could never forget the blade, or the searing agony as it sliced through my skin again and again. My face turned deathly pale in an instant. My body trembled with uncontrollable terror. The cardboard box in my hands crashed to the floor with a loud bang. Every eye in the room snapped toward me, my father's face turning livid. Shen Xuan, what are you doing lurking there like a common thief? I stared deathly at the man's face, my voice coming out as a raspy broken croak. It's him. He's the one who kidnapped me. Absolute nonsense. My mother's voice erupted, thick with grief and resentment. This is Xiao's dear friend. What kind of insane lies are you spewing now? A flicker of guilt flashed across Shen Xiao's face, but she quickly glided over, masking herself as the caring sister. Yuan, you must be completely exhausted. Are you having hallucinations again? Let me help you back to your room to rest. I shoved Shen Xiao away, my hands trembling violently as I fumbled for my phone, desperate to call the police. But a powerful hand suddenly clamped around my wrist. Xie Yusheng's eyes were like shards of ice, his voice vibrating with a sharp warning. Enough. Shen Xiuan, on an occasion like today, do you really intend to keep playing this kidnapping victim? Know your limits. Their words were like a barrage of frigid blades, stabbing through my heart until it was shredded. The pain was so agonizing I could barely breathe. My lips quivered, and I stared at the four of them for an eternity, unable to force a single sound from my throat. I had almost forgotten, here, not a single soul would ever believe me, because ultimately no one gives a damn if I live or die. Numb and broken, I clutched my box and fled like a wounded animal. Even after returning to the villa, I felt like I was still drowning in that dark, narrow room. Every inch of my skin was crawling with a deathly chill. The memories of my torture magnified in my mind, twisting my thoughts into a chaotic mess. If that man is Shen Xiao's close friend, was my kidnapping orchestrated by her all along? I tried to steady my spiraling emotions, my fingers shaking as I opened a search engine. I typed in the name Lin Shang, the youngest scion of the Lin Group, a major player in the city's elite power circles, with deep connections in both the corporate and criminal underworld. A man who stood at the pinnacle of prestige. As I stared at his professional headshot, a wave of pure unadulterated terror washed over me. Suddenly, a contemptuous sneer echoed from behind me. Shen Xiuan, using a fake kidnapping just to bait a man's attention. That was a clever little move. I turned around to find Yu Sheng staring at me, his dark eyes harboring a bloodthirsty intensity. Weren't you just begging me for a divorce? And yet you've already picked out your next target. Are you really that desperate? that obsessed with stealing everything from Xiao. I didn't expect Xie Yusheng to return tonight. I assumed he'd stay at the Shen estate to keep Shen Xiao company. In Xie Yusheng's eyes, my silence was a blatant admission of guilt. He narrowed his dark, piercing eyes, a cold, derisive sneer escaping his thin lips. Shen Shiyuan, you were the one who dragged me into this web of a marriage. And as I've said before, unless you end up dead, you will remain just like me, rotting away, trapped in this marriage for the rest of your life. With that, Xie Yusheng loosened his tie and strode toward the bathroom. I stared at the man's retreating back, feeling nothing but a hollow sense of numbness. Xie Yusheng, I am already trapped in death, because I am in fact already dead. I whispered the words under my breath, my voice as faint as a withered leaf drifting outside the window. No one was listening. The next day at the police station, I clenched my fist tight, sitting stiffly on a plastic chair, waiting for my case to be processed. I recounted every agonizing detail of my kidnapping. I omitted the part about my actual death. After all, I was standing here in the flesh. No one would ever believe the truth. I could only pray that the police would find concrete evidence to bring the man who murdered me to justice. Only then would the truth finally be dragged into the light. Suddenly, a frantic commotion of footsteps echoed from the entrance. My father, my mother, and Xie Yusheng all came storming into the station. My father's eyes were ablaze with fury. He lunged forward and slapped me hard across the face. Shen Shiyuan, I tolerated your pathetic little tantrums before, but now you have the audacity to bring this circus to the police. The Lin Group is a vital partner to the Shen family right now. Are you trying to ruin us all with your delusions? He raised his hand again, ready to deliver a second blow. I braced myself for the impact, fully expecting the blow. But Jie Yusheng suddenly stepped in, shielding me. That Xiuan is my wife. Her issues, I will handle them. That one word, Yuan, sent my mind spiraling into a daze, as if the noble shining youth of my memories had returned. The Yusheng who once promised to rescue me from the Shens. But before I could even process the thought, Xie Yusheng's icy voice cut through the air right beside my ear. Officer, I am Shen Xiuan's husband. This kidnapping was nothing but a self-directed hoax. Please disregard her report and cancel the case. Seeing this, my father immediately chimed in. Yes, withdraw it. I am Shen Xiuan's father. It's my failure as a parent. She's been rebellious and wild since she was a child, always pulling these outrageous stunts just for attention. We apologize for the trouble. My mother also stepped forward. I am Shen Xiuan's mother. We spoiled her far too much, twisting her personality until she became this delusional. I stood there frozen and paralyzed, my heart feeling as if it were being torn apart by tweezers. These were the people meant to be my warmest, closest kin, yet they spat upon me, condemned me, and viewed my very existence as a stain of shame. I squeezed my eyes shut, feeling every ounce of strength drained from my body. Why did I even expect anything else? Even if the police had accepted my report and eventually stumbled upon my rotting corpse, these people wouldn't have shed a single tear of grief. As I watched the case be officially dismissed, I truly learned the meaning of a heart turning to ash. I don't even remember the hollow walk back from the station. In the desolate silence of the living room, Xie Yusheng's frigid voice rang out once more. Shen Xiuan, before you go around baiting other men, you'd better remember your status. If you ever, he cut himself off, his eyes catching the sight of my pale skin, marked by the angry red welt of my father's slap. It was like a spark of fire piercing into his chest. He felt a strange, suffocating tightness in his chest, and the rest of his sentence died in his throat. A moment later, suppressing his erratic emotions, he grabbed an ice pack and reached toward my face. I snapped back to my senses, and instinctively recoiled, dodging his touch. Xie Yusheng's hand froze midair, rigid and rejected, as his expression instantly soured. Smash! He hurled the ice pack violently to the floor. Yusheng's gaze had returned to its usual frigid state. Fine, I try to be kind and you treat it like poison. Since you love manufacturing your own misery, you deserve to rot in pain. I hope it kills you. He spat those words out and stormed away. I watched his retreating back, a faint, self-deprecating smile playing on my lips. Xie Yusheng, that's exactly how I died, shredded by pain. Much later, when Director Lin called to demand the draft, I finally dragged myself up and retreated to the bedroom. I powered on the laptop and penned the final conclusion for The Other Side of Moonlight. The temple bells echoed in the distance as the leads walked away, one heading north, one south. From this day forth, they would never cross paths again, with no more intersection for the rest of their lives. I buried myself under the heavy blankets, slowly drifting into sleep amidst stifled rhythmic sobs. The next day dawned gloomy as I woke up, unaware that my rewritten ending was causing a firestorm online. If I remember correctly, this was an autobiography based on the author's real love. Why change it to a bad ending as a hardcore fan? I've waited years for a wedding, not to be served this final soul-crushing meal. But others supported me. Great job, author. This is the closure the fans truly needed. A dead to each other ending, hell yes. The male lead clearly never loved her anyway. This finale is perfect. The The female lead finally reclaimed her own identity. The two factions were at each other's throats. I didn't let it bother me. To me, this was the only true ending for Xie Yusheng and me. After finishing breakfast, my phone began to vibrate. Hello, Miss Shen. This is Ji Mengting, a voice announced. You left a prayer ribbon with us a year ago. It's ready for you to collect now. I recalled when Ji Mengting opened her shop 3 years ago. Passing by, I had scribbled down my deepest desires, praying they would manifest in the future. Half an hour later, I arrived at the boutique. I took the faded prayer ribbon from the staff, discovering a wedding ring nestled quietly inside. It was the ring from my marriage to Yusheng, an object I once cherished above all else. Beside it lay a slightly yellowed slip of paper, detailing the wishes I had once held so dear. First, to bridge the rift with my parents and restore our broken bond. Second, for Xie Yusheng to finally see my worth. As long as he loved me, I'd wait forever. As I read, my eyes welled with tears, and I felt my vision begin to blur. Slowly, I sank into a crouch on the floor. The staff member, noticing my distress, asked softly, Miss, are you all right? Did your wishes fail to come true? My voice cracked with a sob. Yes, not a single one was granted. The employee offered a gentle consolation. It's all right. You can participate in our farewell ceremony. Heaven has a way of healing these regrets in other ways. She gestured toward the ceremonial grounds, where a small pagoda woven from paper stood in the center. People were placing personal items or letters into the delicate windows of the paper tower. When it was my turn, I took a sharp, steadying breath and dropped the ribbon containing the ring and my list into the tower. A moment later, the staff tossed a flaming torch into the structure. The fire roared to life, sending a wave of heat against my face. I stared into the dancing orange flames. Every past hope and prayer was being reduced to smoke, gradually drifting away into nothingness. As the sunset colors faded, the shadows of night began to descend. When I finally returned home, the villa was unexpectedly ablaze with lights. I stepped inside only to be greeted by a soft female voice and the sound of laughter. There sat Shen Xiao perched right beside Xie Yusheng, flashing me that perfectly scripted radiant smile. 1 yuan, you're finally home. I stood there in a daze as she continued. The filming location today was just around the corner. And since I'm not really a fan of hotels, Ayu insisted that I stay here at the house. You won't mind, will you? The word home stung. This place had never truly been mine. Shen Xiao's personal clutter was already scattered across the lounge, invading every corner of what was once my marital home with Yusheng. I struggled to force a response from my throat, but before a single syllable could escape, Yusheng interjected sharply. She won't care. I swallowed my unspoken words and forced a faint hollow smirk. Sure, stay as long as you like. After all, none of this will concern me soon anyway. I'm so glad you're okay with it. Yuan, you haven't had dinner yet, right? Why don't you join us? Shen Xiao effortlessly slipped into the role of the lady of the house. I glanced at the table covered in heavy, spicy dishes, and my smile turned more mocking. I have a chronic stomach condition. Even a hint of spice is agony for me. Despite being married all these years, it seems Xie Yusheng truly never bothered to notice. I'm not hungry. Enjoy your meal. I choked out the words and turned to head upstairs. Xie Yusheng watched Shen Xiuan's frail skeletal silhouette as his calm dark eyes flickered for a moment, masking whatever unreadable thoughts lay beneath. I retreated to my sanctuary. But the moment I hit the bed, the phone in my pocket buzzed with a notification. I opened it to see Shen Xiao's latest social media update. A series of aesthetic photos showing off the villa. Her caption read, "The swing in the gardenias." So you kept your promise. Our dream home was waiting all along. Heart emoji. My heart shuddered violently in my chest, and the air felt like lead in my lungs. All those lingering doubts that used to haunt me, the things I could never quite wrap my head around, finally made perfect, cruel sense in this instant. I finally understood why that fairy tale wallpaper looked so out of place against the villa's original cold and minimalist interior. Xie Yusheng refused to let me change a single thing. I remember once, out of sheer curiosity, I sat on that swing, and he exploded in a terrifying fit of rage, forbidding me from ever setting foot in that area again. I wondered why throughout all 4 seasons, the vases in the lounge were always filled with fresh gardenias. Turns out this marital home was designed for Shen Xiao from the start. Even my already numb heart couldn't help but feel a sharp, stabbing agony in this moment. I clicked off my phone, staring at my own ghastly pale reflection on the dark screen, and let out a sudden hollow laugh. Silent tears began to trace paths down my face, wiping away the remnants of my grief. A resolute smile finally touched my lips. Whether it's Xie Yusheng, the man, or this house itself, it's high time everything was returned to its rightful owner. Taking a deep breath, I walked into the study and printed out 2 specific documents. The first was a divorce settlement. Without a second of hesitation, I signed my name. The second was a formal final testament. The contents of the will were stark and simple, just a few brief cold sentences. I am Shen Xiuan. Upon my death, I will not be a ghost of the Shen family, nor will I occupy a spot in the Xie family grave. Having finalized my departure, I tucked both documents into an elegant box. Just as I was about to retreat to my bedroom, A voice drifted through the crack of the guest room door. It was Xie Yusheng deep in a phone conversation. Psychiatric treatment. Brother Yu. Do the Shens really plan to dump Shen Xiuan at Chanyin Temple for recovery? Well, it makes sense. Her obsession with you is so twisted and pathologically clingy. She honestly looks mentally ill. She definitely needs her soul purified. Once she's officially labeled as a lunatic. Your family will surely back your divorce from her. You're finally going to be free of that woman. Congrats in advance on a happy future with Xiao. A perfect reunion, Yusheng. Didn't offer an immediate reply. He simply tugged at his tie, an inexplicable wave of irritation surging within him. Suddenly his gaze flickered, toward the hallway outside the door. When his eyes locked onto mine, an inexplicable panic seized his chest, causing him to abruptly cut the call. He glared at Shen Xuan, his tone laced with annoyance. Eavesdropping again, are we? My expression remained hauntingly calm. I didn't need to eavesdrop on that call. Weren't you already looking for a chance to tell me? The moment those words left my lips, the air fell into a graveyard silence. Xie Yusheng's thin lips pressed into a tight line. He hesitated for a heartbeat, but the cold truth spilled out anyway. Master Kuchan's soul-cleansing course at Chanyin Temple is necessary. It will guide you to face your distorted perceptions and dispel the darkness festering in your heart. I'm taking you there tomorrow. I never imagined that the love I clung to for years would be viewed as evidence of a twisted mind. A faint smirk tugged at my lips as I whispered, "Fine. For my final days, rather than staying in this house that isn't mine, I'd much rather be somewhere far away from them." Xie Yusheng had braced himself for a hysterical meltdown, but hearing that serene hollow "fine" left him completely stunned. Staring at my retreating figure, he instinctively called out to me, "Where are you going to pack my things? Aren't we heading to Chanyin Temple tomorrow?" I didn't give Yusheng another glance after saying that, turning away to swiftly return to my room. The following morning, I carried my box downstairs. Every trace of my existence in the villa had been wiped clean, leaving only this cardboard box filled with the relics of my past. Xie Yusheng's gaze fell upon the box, his eyes flickering with an unreadable emotion. His lips parted slightly, but before he could utter a word, Shen Xuan had already brushed past him with her box. He froze for a second, before chasing after her, his voice uncharacteristically soft. "Focus on finding your peace. The day after tomorrow is your birthday. I'll come to pick you up." My eyelashes fluttered slightly, as it suddenly hit me. The day after tomorrow would have been my 26th birthday. A wave of bitter irony washed over my lips. What a twisted coincidence. The day after tomorrow is also when I depart this mortal world forever. I opened my mouth to decline, but just then Shen Xiao rushed over looking frantic. "Ayu, I'm running late for my shoot. Could you please drive me to the set?" Before Xie Yusheng could even respond, the words had already left my mouth. "Go on, take her. I'll make my own way there." With that, I lugged the box I'd just placed in the trunk back out. Yuan, you're only going to the temple to meditate. Why are you bringing so much junk?" "Here, let me help." As Shen Xiao spoke, she lunged toward my cardboard box. Thud! The box slipped and hit the pavement. Stack after stack of pink love letters addressed to Xie Yusheng, along with our wedding portraits spilled out across the ground. Shen Xiao feigned a playful giggle. "You. Just look at this. Even going to a temple to cleanse her soul. She's still hauling your love letters and wedding photos. She really is obsessed with you, isn't she? Her whole heart is just filled with you, usually." Hearing this would make Xie Yusheng's face darken with rage. But right now he remained eerily composed. His dark eyes locked onto me as I knelt on the concrete, gathering my belongings as if they were precious treasures. The unease that had been brewing in his chest began to fade. A faint smirk tugged at his lips, though his voice remained as frigid as ice. "Fine, whatever." He yanked the car door open and ushered Shen Xiao inside. He didn't spare me a single backward glance as the engine roared to life. One day later, my birthday, and my final 24 hours in the world of the living. I waited from the first light of dawn until the sun dipped below the horizon. But Xie Yusheng never showed up. Suddenly, my phone buzzed violently. A breaking news notification flashed across the screen. "Internet goes wild, the other side of moonlight drama. Lead actress Shen Xiao injured on set. Tycoon Xie Yusheng loses control. Carries her bridal style onto a helicopter to Haicheng." I stared at the screen and the heart I swore would never feel again shuddered one last time. It was exactly as I predicted, yet it still stung like a betrayal. Over the past few years, without fail, every time my birthday rolled around, Shen Xiao would either fall mysteriously ill or get into some convenient accident. I've honestly lost track of how many years I've spent celebrating my birthday in total solitude. No bouquets of flowers, no presents of family, no calls from friends, and certainly no warmth from the man I loved. I pulled out my phone and dialed Xie Yusheng's number. The line rang twice before he finally picked up. Yusheng's low, frigid voice crackled with sheer impatience. "Xiao is sick. I'll come pick you up tomorrow. To make up for your birthday then." Xie Yusheng. I started to speak, but before I could finish my sentence, my mother's anguish-accusing voice erupted in the background. Yuan Yuan, your sister is in a crisis. If you won't come help, at least stop being so selfish. How can you still think about your birthday at a time like this? Do you even have a shred of a conscience left? The line went dead with a series of sharp beeps ending the call. I sat there in a daze for a moment, staring at the blank screen of my disconnected phone. And then I let out a soft, hollow chuckle. It's funny. Once you stop harboring expectations, the pain doesn't actually feel that sharp anymore. I didn't try to call Xie Yusheng back. I wouldn't dare disturb their perfect family portrait again. Instead, I simply typed out the words I hadn't been able to say and sent them to Xie Yusheng. In the study, there's a final gift waiting for you on the desk. From now on, we are both finally free. Once I hit send, I set the phone aside for the last time. I began taking the items from the cardboard box, tossing them one by one into the roaring furnace. The very last piece was the silver longevity lock my parents gave me. My thumb traced the faded engravings on the cold metal, and for a second I could almost hear their doting voices again. May our Yuan Yuan grow up safe, healthy, and full of joy. Tears surged uncontrollably, overflowing and blurring my vision. I dropped the longevity lock into the heart of the fire. I suppose having felt love once means this life wasn't a total waste. Finally, I stood before the Buddha, sinking slowly to my knees, with palms pressed together in solemn prayer. I devoutly whispered, your humble daughter, Shen Shiyuan, was granted the mercy of heaven to return briefly to this mortal realm. Now every obsession has faded and my heart is free of love. As I prepared to step into the afterlife, a strange sensation washed over me. I opened my eyes to find a divine golden light swirling above my head. The final rays of the setting sun bathed my increasingly transparent body. My voice cracked with a heavy sob as I softly whispered to my fading self, in your next life, Shen Shiyuan, happy birthday. With those final words, my physical form vanished completely from this world. Suddenly, the phone I had left on the floor flickered to life, vibrating frantically in the silence. Night fell. A Koenigsegg tore through the stillness of the dark, speeding like a lightning bolt toward Chanyin Temple. Inside the car, Xie Yusheng stared at the screen, reading the message sent by Shen Shiyuan. His cold, handsome face looked as if it were carved from frost. But a second later, a memory seemed to strike him, and the tension in his brow finally relaxed. He rubbed his temples with his long, elegant fingers, letting out a sigh of weary resignation. She's been here for 2 days to mend her character, yet the moment she gets angry, she still resorts to these petty, spiteful words. He dismissed it as another one of her foolish tricks. A flicker of uncharacteristic tenderness crossed his dark eyes. Forget it, after all these years. If she can't change, then she simply won't. The car screeched to a halt as Xie Yusheng strode toward the meditation hall. He began dialing Shen Xiuan's number repeatedly. The faint rhythmic sound of chanting echoed through the temple. Yusheng explained his purpose to the head monk and quickly processed the paperwork to end her spiritual retreat. While he waited for the formalities to conclude, Yusheng's gaze drifted casually toward the wall. Rows of scriptures, copied by those seeking enlightenment, were neatly displayed. His eyes were immediately drawn to a specific parchment, filled with crooked, messy, and utterly disorganized handwriting. A slight smirk touched his lips, still as atrocious as ever, just as pathetic as the handwriting in her love letters. The sound of approaching footsteps echoed behind him. Yusheng instinctively turned his head, ready to speak with his usual cold authority. What kind of tantrum are you throwing this time? Just come home with. The last word died abruptly in his throat. His expression turned menacingly cold. Where is Shen Shiyuan? His frigid aura stifled the room. The person before him trembled in sheer terror, stammering out the news. Miss Shen, she's vanished. The following day, the Shen villa was adorned with festive decorations, yet the atmosphere inside was as biting as a winter frost. Upon hearing Yusheng's report, Father Shen slammed his fist against the table. That rebellious girl, every year on her birthday she pulls these stunts. What the hell is she trying to achieve? Shen Xiao spoke up, her voice dripping with feigned guilt. Mom, Dad, it's all my fault for getting hurt yesterday. If only I had been more careful, I wouldn't have ruined Yuan Yuan's birthday banquet. Mother Shen, overwhelmed with pity, clutched Shen Xiao's hand tightly. How could any of this be your fault? Father Shen's rage remained unextinguished. Yuan Yuan is completely beyond saving. The moment she crawls back, peck her off to a psychiatric facility overseas. At that moment, the silent Xie Yusheng finally spoke. Father, Xuan isn't just your daughter. She is my wedded wife, the young mistress of the Z family. His tone carried a razor-sharp edge of warning. Father Shen's eyes flickered with unease as he let out a long, heavy sigh. Ayu, on behalf of the Shen family, I am truly sorry. We failed to discipline her properly, allowing her to use such despicable means to force this marriage, leaving both our families in constant turmoil. Now that Xiao has finally returned, Yuan Xiao, but the Xie family code stipulates we take only one wife in a lifetime. Before the sentence could be finished, Yusheng cut him off with a chilling finality. Shen Xiao's face instantly turned as ghostly as paper. Shock was written across the faces of both parents as they exchanged bewildered glances. Yusheng offered no further explanation, rising from his seat to depart. It's getting late. If there's any word on Shiyuan, I'll be sure to notify you. Just as he reached the threshold, Shen Xiao scrambled to catch up with him, calling out in a delicate, pleading voice, "Ah, you. Let me go back with you." She was breathless from the chase, her hair slightly disheveled, her face a mask of desperation and hope. Xie Yusheng's eyes remained flat, devoid of a single ripple, as he pulled out a keycard and handed it back to her. "Xiao, that is the Yueshan Villa. It is the marital home I share with Xiyuan. It's inappropriate for you to stay there. As for your belongings, I've already had them moved back here." The smile that had barely begun to bloom on Xiao's face froze. She tried to stammer a response, but Yusheng had already brushed past her and climbed into his car. Inside the quiet cabin, Xie Yusheng retrieved his phone and pulled up his chat history with Shen Xuan. His elegant fingers tapped the screen, firing off 2 messages. "Where are you?" Xiao has already moved out of the Yueshan Villa. 30 minutes crawled by, and the phone screen remained stubbornly dark. Yusheng reached for the exquisite gift box resting on the seat, flipping it open to reveal a breathtaking necklace shimmering with pave diamonds. It was the birthday tribute he had curated for Shen Xiyuan. The small pendant swayed gently, emitting a crisp, crystalline chime. Within Yusheng's deep-set eyes, an unreadable darkness swirled, a cold intensity that would make anyone's skin crawl. Over the days that followed, Xie Yusheng mobilized every resource at his command, tearing the capital apart, yet Xiyuan remained a ghost. Finally, on the 5th day, a lead emerged. Brother Yushen Xiyuan has surfaced in Rangxi. And get this, she's already out there hunting for a new sugar daddy. The moment the words hit the air, the private lounge fell into a bone-chilling silence. The man speaking had a look of frantic excitement on his face, proffering his phone to Xie Yusheng like a trophy. As he swiped through the screen, he kept chirping away. "Look, you my friend caught these shots. Shen Xiuan is clearly living her best life. She actually went to a club and ordered a fleet of male models. In the photo, a woman draped in a provocative red dress was flanked by several handsome male models, wearing a radiant, carefree smile. Although only her profile was visible, the silhouette and contours were an uncanny match for Shen Xiuan. That obsessive lapdog actually dared to cheat on Brother Yu. Has she completely lost her mind? I guess she's tired of being your pathetic simp, huh? Last time she faked a kidnapping and vanished for a week. She's certainly getting smarter this time around, actually trying to play hard to get." The man spoke with self-righteous indignation. "You, I'll send my guys to drag Xiuan back right now that we have hard proof of her infidelity. The Zie family will definitely grant you that divorce." "Don't bother. That's not her." His piercing voice caused the man to freeze mid-step as he prepared to leave. Xie Yusheng spared only a single glance at the screen before looking away. His voice was devoid of any warmth or emotion. Shen Xiuan's face is much smaller than that woman's, and her features are far more delicate. Besides, Xiuan has a tiny beauty mark on her neck, exactly 2 centimeters above her right collarbone. Realizing the depth of his own observation, Xie Yusheng suddenly stiffened, his words trailing off. His eyes narrowed in an instant, becoming as cold and unforgiving as frost. The aura surrounding him plummeted to a sub-zero chill. With a violent shattering crack, he slammed his crystal glass onto the floor. Shards of glass erupted in every direction. Everyone present felt a cold shiver of terror down their spines, hardly daring to draw a single breath. Wen Yuan, sitting beside Xie Yusheng, stood up abruptly and signaled to the room with a sharp glance. Even the most oblivious people in that private lounge could see that Xie Yusheng was in a lethal mood, not daring to linger for another second. They scrambled to make their exit. Soon the room held only Xie Yusheng, Suzhoubai, and Wen Yuan. Suzhoubai and Wen Yuan exchanged a knowing look, stripping away their usual playful banter, to speak with somber gravity. "You, that's enough. You've made your point. You've punished Xiyuan more than enough by now. Remember how she used to be. It's not like you're unaware of how she was. Arrogant, entitled, and utterly spoiled. Wild and insufferably haughty. In a body weighing barely 100 pounds. She carried 90 pounds of pure rebellion." As Wen Yuan spoke, the image of the old Shen Xiuan flickered in his mind, prompting him to shake his head slightly. "She literally erased her entire personality just for you. Changing that much is no small feat. Don't push her too hard. If you squeeze too tight, things will eventually snap. What if our little goddess actually runs away for good?" Xie Yusheng's grip on his glass tightened, his knuckles turning a stark ghostly white. His voice was as sharp as a winter frost. "Impossible. Shen Xiuan can't survive without me." A strange glint flickered in Suzhoubai's narrow eyes, but he remained silent. Wen Yuan couldn't help but arch an eyebrow, his tone laced with mockery. "Oh, really? Then where exactly is Shen Xiuan right now?" Xie Yusheng's face instantly darkened with rage. Wen Yuan chuckled, knowing the man was in a foul mood tonight, and wisely decided to quit while he was ahead, knowing when to stop. He stepped forward and patted Yusheng on the shoulder. He sighed. "All right, that's enough. It's time to reel her back in. Don't let this play out until you're left holding nothing but shadows." Xie Yusheng's eyes flickered with a hidden shadow as he brushed Wen Yuan's hand aside, turning to exit the room. He left behind only a cold sentence. I'm leaving. Watching Xie Yusheng's retreating figure. Wen Wen shook his head in resignation. Keep playing with fire, buddy. Wen Yuan leaned his weight against Shu Zhoubai, his tone brimming with schadenfreude. How long do you think Xi Yuan will drag this drama out? Shu Zhoubai's pale irises were unreadable in the dim light. Wen Yuan continued talking to himself. I bet it won't even last a week. The moment you shows even a hint of affection, Xi Yuan will come crawling right back like she always does. Old Shu, what's your take? Seeing no reaction from his friend, Wen Yuan suddenly recalled a hidden detail, and his expression shifted to one of grave concern. With a heavy, complicated sigh, he spoke up. Old Shu, you aren't still harboring feelings for Shen Xiuan, are you? The moment the question left his lips, the hand resting on the shoulder was violently wrenched away. A flash of genuine fury crossed Shu Zhoubai's handsome face. Stop talking absolute nonsense. With that sharp rebuke, he turned and stormed off, leaving Wen Yuan standing there, all alone in the dim hallway, clutching his throbbing hand and yelping in pain. Watching Shu Zhoubai's rigid, retreating silhouette, Wen Wen narrowed his eyes thoughtfully, eventually letting out a frustrated, scoffing laugh. Seriously, both of them? What is wrong with everyone today? Did they all wake up on the wrong side of the bed? The car glided to a smooth halt in front of the Yueshan villa. As Xie Yusheng stepped out, his phone began to vibrate. Hello, are you the husband of the deceased Shen Xiuan? This is the forensic department of the municipal hospital. We need you to come down and identify Shen Xiuan's remains. Before the caller could even finish the sentence, Yusheng's expression twisted into a mask of pure coldness. He hung up with a derisive sneer, tossing the device carelessly to his assistant. Trace the IP of this number immediately. Shen Xiuan has dragged this game out long enough. It's time she stops this pathetic charade. The moment he crossed the threshold of the lounge, a maid approached him trembling as she held out an elegant gift box. Sir, while I was cleaning the study earlier, I accidentally bumped into this. It's from the mistress, something she wrote. The maid was shaking like a leaf, her voice faltering, unsure of how to deliver the grim contents. Yusheng snatched it from her with visible annoyance, but a single glance left his entire soul paralyzed with shock. It felt as though an invisible hand had gripped his heart, making every breath feel suffocating and heavy. He stared intently at the bold characters on the paper, the veins on the back of his hand bulging from the sheer force of his grip, as if they might burst through his skin at any moment. Perhaps it was the sight of her signature on the bottom right of that divorce settlement that stung. Or perhaps it was the chilling words, last will and testament. His usually calm and indifferent eyes were now swirled with a terrifying bloodshot crimson. So this was the gift Xiuan promised him. How calculating. First a prank call to identify her corpse, and now a staged will and divorce papers. One scheme after another, Yusheng let out a low mocking scoff, before shredding the documents into 1,000 pieces. His voice was bone-chilling, as he ordered his assistant to double the search efforts. Once you drag Shen Xiuan back here, lock her in the basement. Since she still hasn't learned how to be obedient, I'll personally teach her the rules. The assistant felt a cold shiver down his spine, and hurriedly blurted out a response. Yes, sir, before rushing away. Yusheng's chest was heaving with violent emotion, his left hand trembling uncontrollably, as a murderous aura radiated from his every pore. The same call was placed to the Shen residence. Shen's parents were equally livid upon hearing the news. Shen Xiao looked at her father, who had just smashed a teacup, and quickly stepped in with a soothing voice. Dad, please calm your anger. Xiuan is likely just being spiteful, trying to force us to apologize to her first. Mother Shen's tears began to flow freely, as she let out one heavy sigh after another. Xiuan was such a darling sweet child. How did she become this monstrous? Shen Xiao immediately embraced Mother Shen, whispering comfort. Mom, Dad, the priority is to smoke her out of hiding. She's been lurking in the shadows for too long. If she actually runs into real danger, what will we do then? With a soft, manipulative tone, she added, I have a plan that will force her to show her face. The following morning, the Shens hosted a formal severing of ties banquet. As soon as the news broke, the entire capital was sent into an absolute frenzy. People had seen lavish weddings and grand funerals, but no one had ever witnessed a spectacle like this. Crowds gathered, fueled by a thirst for high society gossip. Father Shen stood upon the podium, announcing with a grim, resolute expression, from this day forward, the Shen family officially severs all ties with Shen Xiuan. Henceforth, Shen Xiao remains the only daughter of the Shen family. The audience erupted into a chaotic uproar, a tidal wave of whispers and gossip flooding the hall. In a shadowed corner, Wen Yuan glanced at the impassive Xie Yusheng, unable to hold back any longer. Shouldn't we stop this? Isn't this a bit too ruthless for Xiuan to handle? Ruthless Yusheng's thin lips curled into a mocking arc, his voice dropping to a bone-chilling temperature. No need, this is actually for the best. Hearing that, Wen Yuan felt an icy shiver crawl up his spine, and couldn't help but shudder in place. He realized with dawning horror, after all these years knowing Xie Yusheng, that the total collapse of Xiuan's bond with her family was fueled by Yusheng's calculated manipulation behind the scenes, having been friends with him for a lifetime. Wen Yuan knew exactly what kind of monster Yusheng truly was. Contrary to the public image of a noble, self-controlled gentleman, Yusheng had intended to domesticate Shen Xiuan from the start, turning her into a broken parasite who could only survive through him. Xiuan's prolonged disappearance this time had clearly crossed Yusheng's final line of patience. Wen Yuan felt a wave of visceral dread, cursing himself with a dark thought. If he hadn't intentionally misled Xiuan about who her savior was, would her fate have been this tragic? But it was merely a fleeting spark of guilt, in the end. As long as Xiuan remained entangled with a man like Xie Yusheng, her bridge to the Shen family was destined to burn. Suddenly, a violent commotion broke out among the crowd. Several officers in deep blue uniforms, wearing grim, solemn expressions, marched toward them. The lead officer, his face a mask of granite, flashed his badge with clinical precision. "We are from the Capitol Police. Shen Xiuan's body has been discovered in a derelict warehouse on the outskirts of Dongcheng. We require the family to come and identify the remains immediately, and cooperate with the ongoing homicide investigation." The words fell like a guillotine, plunging the room into a deathly silence, as if a serrated blade had been plunged into his chest. Xie Yusheng's heart seized with a sudden agonizing spasm. The pain was so violent and overwhelming that he stumbled backward, losing his footing. Wen Yuan snapped back to his senses, quickly reaching out to steady him. "You." The lead investigator, his expression heavy with gravity, spoke in a low, measured tone. The victim suffered multiple contusions and fractures from blunt force trauma. Post-mortem, the body was kept in a freezing environment. Time of death was quite some time ago. There isn't a single intact part on the body's surface. Mother Shen's legs buckled beneath her, and she collapsed into a hysterical fit of weeping. There has to be a mistake. How could this possibly be my Yuan? How could my precious daughter end up like this? Father Shen stood frozen, his face turning a deathly ashen gray, his lips trembling so violently that he couldn't force out a single syllable. A flicker of secret triumph flashed in Shen Xiao's eyes. It vanished as quickly as it appeared, as she rushed forward to console the grieving mother. In the middle of the chaos, Xie Yusheng remained eerily silent. He stared intently at the remains of Xiuan's face, as if trying to pierce through her very soul. Slowly, Yusheng extended his hand, reaching out to touch Xiuan one last time, but his hand was shaking uncontrollably. Every time his fingertips neared the skin of her face, he jerked back. Over and over, he tried and failed, until he finally gave up. Yusheng turned his gaze toward the forensic pathologist, his eyes bloodshot and predatory. "I demand an autopsy." When Wen was stunned by his cold declaration. "You stop. This is clearly Xiuan, there's no doubt." "Yes, perform the autopsy." "How can you be certain this is my daughter?" Mother Shen grasped at this hope like a drowning woman, pulling away from Shen Xiao's embrace, to scream with raw, desperate emotion. Yuan, please come back. Mom was wrong. I promise I won't be angry with you anymore." After consulting with the officers, the coroner handed over a file. "This is Shen Xiuan's DNA analysis report. Her identity has been confirmed beyond any doubt. Family members, please accept our deepest condolences." The words struck like a lightning bolt, shattering everyone present. A terrifying, violent aura began to swirl around Xie Yusheng. His voice was low and hoarse. "I said I want an autopsy. Are you all deaf? She was right by our side just a few days ago. How could she have been dead for so long?" His usual mask of refined elegance was completely pulverized. At this moment, Xie Yusheng resembled a feral berserk dragon, whose most precious treasure had been stolen, utterly terrifying. As Xie Yusheng's composure spiraled into a total meltdown, an officer stepped forward, producing a sealed evidence bag, his expression heavy with grim solemnity. "This is the video footage recovered from the scene after restoration. It documents the full ordeal of the victim Shen Xiuan." The moment the play button was pressed, Xiuan's choked, tearful whimpers suddenly echoed through the room. With just a single glance at the screen, Mother Shen gasped, clutching her mouth, as her body surrendered to violent, uncontrollable tremors. Yuan really was kidnapped? She wasn't lying to us, my daughter." My baby girl. Father Shen looked as if his spine had been ripped out, his eyes welling up, with a mask of agonizing regret and soul-crushing pain. Yuan, Mother Shen's voice broke into incoherent sobs. Unable to endure the horrific imagery, she finally lost consciousness. Father Shen and Xiao scrambled to rush her to the hospital, but Xie Yusheng remained eyes glued to the flickering screen, refusing to miss even a single frame of the nightmare. He watched as Xiuan's pale jade-like skin was desecrated by shocking, vivid crimson welts. He watched her trembling hands dial the phone, only to be brutally hung up on time after time. He saw her eyes shift from a desperate spark of hope to a hollow, lifeless void. She collapsed onto the cold floor, her life force draining away, as a gruesome flower of blood bloomed across her throat. Helpless tears traced a path down her face. Though she appeared to have stopped breathing, her lips moved in a ghostly tremor. There was no audible sound, yet Yusheng heard the name she mouthed with haunting clarity. "Xie Yusheng." those 3 whispered syllables, transformed into a frozen blade, plunging straight into the center of Yusheng's heart. Each shard of ice carried a bone-deep chill, forcing a sharp throbbing agony through his every vein. For the first time in his life, he truly tasted the flavor of a fate far worse than death. Beside him, even Wen Yuan couldn't hold back his tears. He never imagined that the girl from his memories, the one so arrogant, willful, and always ready to bicker with him, would end up like this, dying in a way that left everyone speechless. The radiant, dazzling Xiwan had been reduced to a broken corpse. Yusheng staggered forward, coming to a halt before Xiwan's remains. His long, trembling fingers reached out to trace the jagged bloodstains on her neck. The crimson marks had long since dried, leaving behind nothing but a soul-chilling coldness. Suddenly, the words from her final testament flashed through his mind. His voice was low, rasping, and barely audible as he muttered, "Refusing to be a ghost of the Shens, Yong, Yi, refusing to be buried in the Z family grave." Then he began to laugh. His cold, handsome features twisted into a grotesque mask of agony. A single tear splashed onto Xiwan's hand, which was marred by blade scars. His gentle touch suddenly turned into a violent grip as he hissed, his voice dripping with a dark, terrifying obsession. "Shen Xiwan, you are my wife. How dare you think you won't belong to the seas?" Wen, sensing the danger, lunged forward and grabbed Yusheng's arm to pull him back. "You control yourself, calm down." Yusheng didn't even flinch. His grip only tightened further. He snarled through gritted teeth, "I'll make damn sure you rot in the Xie family grave." When Yuan realized he couldn't break the man's hold, his heart racing with increasing panic. "Somebody help me, move him." The others rushed in to restrain the spiraling man. "Sir, please. You need to get a grip on yourself." Xie Yusheng was blind to the world around him. Every sound was muffled, every face a blur. His entire universe was the cold body of Shen Shiyuan. Suddenly, a metallic sweetness surged in the back of his throat. Fresh blood spilled from his lips, staining the floor. As he plunged into total darkness and lost consciousness, his head felt like it was being split open by a dull blade. In the midst of the mental fog, he faintly heard the delicate ethereal chime of a bell. It felt as though an invisible hand was flipping through his mind, dragging his soul back to that sweltering midsummer. The cicadas were screaming in the trees, and a gentle breeze was dancing through the air. One afternoon, as he walked back to the classroom from the library, he suddenly froze mid-step. He lifted his eyes to look, only to see a slender silhouette in a green dress, perched carelessly upon a school desk. A torrent of golden sunlight cascaded over her, and the bell on her ankle swayed with every motion, emitting a melody as crisp as it was enchanting. She was like a sudden, refreshing breeze. Yuan, I caught Shen Xiao writing a love letter to Xie Yusheng yesterday." A girl nearby leaned in to spill the tea to Xiwan. Shen Xiwan let out a disdainful huff. "Don't even mention that guy to me. He's honestly so freaking annoying." Just as she finished her sentence, Xiwan paused her meticulous nail polishing and arched an eyebrow in curiosity. "Wait, who are we talking about, the CA family heir exactly? That genius dual majoring in CS and finance, the future of the Z Empire." Shen Xiwan's eyes darted around mischievously, a look of pure indifference washing over her face. What's wrong with her taste? Why fall for a literal block of stone? But honestly, Shen Xiao is such a pain. They deserve each other. Let them stay locked together forever. Just looking at them makes me want to gag. The surrounding circle of girls hummed in agreement. Then one of them hatched a wicked plan. Yuan, Shen Xiao played the victim card, milking everyone's sympathy, just to snatch your lead dancer position away. Why don't you retaliate by stealing her crush? It would be the ultimate petty revenge. At the mention of the lead dancer role, Xiwan's temper flared up instantly. She was clearly the superior dancer, yet Xiao botched her moves, shed 2 fake tears, and stole the spotlight. To make it worse, Xiao had the audacity to gloat, though Xiwan was fuming with rage. She still clung to a shred of logic. She curled her lip in distaste. "Those are 2 different things. I'm not going to ruin my own day over her. Besides, I already have my eyes on a new target. Suzhoubai is way more my vibe than Xie Yusheng. But just imagine the drama. If you seduce Xie Yusheng and then dump him like trash, you'd be humiliating both of them in one go. Well, what do you think?" The other girl continued to egg her on. Shen Xiwan rested her chin on her hand, lost in thought, before finally relenting. "I'll give it some thought. Does any of you actually have Xie Yusheng's WeChat?" The surrounding girls immediately erupted into a chaotic flurry of schemes. The classroom was a cacophony of giggles and whispers. While outside the door, Xie Yusheng stared intensely at that vibrant green silhouette, his fists clenched instinctively, knuckles turning a ghostly white, as he let out a sharp, frigid scoff, and turned to vanish down the hall. Shen Xiwan was a notorious class cutter. Their paths crossed again in a crowded KTV booth for a classmate's birthday. She was draped in a sultry red slip dress, with a delicate dew-kissed rose tucked behind her ear. Her winged eyeliner was sharp enough to kill, making it impossible for anyone to look away. She was exactly what the boys described in their private chats, clueless yet dangerously seductive. A total temptress, capable of stealing a man's very soul with a glance. She strolled in clinging to the arm of her latest boyfriend. The man was tall and lean, radiating a refined scholarly aura that actually seemed to complement Shiyuan's fiery energy. How long has it even been? Another week, another new boyfriend. From a shadowed corner, Jie Yusheng watched the scene unfold, the disdain in his eyes thickening into something visceral, almost tangible in its intensity. Trash. Pathetic. These venomous insults swirled relentlessly in his mind. He watched in silence as she flirted and played with her new man, her laughter ringing out like crystal. He even saw someone slip something suspicious into Shiyuan's drink, yet his expression remained flat and indifferent. He didn't utter a single word of warning. A simple rescue was boring, only by intervening at her moment of utter despair and helplessness, descending like a god to pull her from the abyss. Would he be etched into her heart forever? Yusheng's dark eyes were bottomless pits, resembling a predator concealed in the shadows, stalking his unsuspecting prey, waiting for her to stumble into the snare, waiting for that perfect calculated moment to save her. But Shen Xuan was far more cunning than he anticipated. She wasn't nearly stupid enough to let herself be slaughtered like a lamb. By the time he finally decided to enter, the room was in total shambles. Tables and chairs were overturned everywhere. Spilled liquor saturated the entire floor. Xu Zhoubai was already locked in a violent scuffle with her would-be assailant. Yusheng's eyes flickered with a cold predatory glint as he hauled Shen Xuan out from the heart of the chaotic crowd. The autumn wind bit through the air with a chilling intensity, finally jolting Shen Xuan back to a state of semi-consciousness. Her misty, unfocused eyes locked onto him. The man's features were strikingly sharp and defined, and his warm embrace felt incredibly secure as he strode forward. After staring at him for what felt like an eternity, she finally managed to find her voice. Her tone was soft and melodic as she whispered, "Jie Yusheng, was it you who saved me?" Jie Yusheng remained stone-faced and silent. He placed her down on a nearby outdoor bench, his expression remaining completely indifferent. He didn't offer a denial, nor did he provide a confirmation. However, when one caught up to them, his voice dripping with mockery. "Well, if it isn't the illustrious second miss of the Shen family. So tell us, how does it feel? Are you moved to tears yet? Thinking of repaying him with your body?" Because of the arrival of the Shen family's adopted daughter, she had been demoted from the eldest daughter to a mere second miss. Xuan absolutely loathed that title. In that instant, she desperately wanted to lunge forward and claw the punchable smirk right off Wen Yuan's face. But the sight of Jie Yusheng forced her to suppress her rage. Just as she opened her mouth to speak, Jie Yusheng had already turned his back and walked away. By the very next morning, Shen Xiuan had ruthlessly dumped her latest boyfriend. She made a high-profile declaration she was coming for Jie Yusheng. The scandalous news spread through the campus like wildfire. The girls were filled with righteous indignation, terrified Xiuan would corrupt the perfect top-tier student Yusheng. The guys, on the other hand, teased and laughed. Young Mr. Z is certainly in luck with such a beauty, though who knows if he can actually handle a wild spirit like Shen Xiuan. Another student immediately shot back. "What do you know? Mr. Z would never fall for her flashy, superficial tricks." The crowd erupted into a chorus of boisterous laughter. One comment followed another, fueling a heated and lively atmosphere. Meanwhile, the man of the hour, Jie Yusheng, remained calm, his gaze fixed intently on the doorway. There was Shen Xiuan clutching a lunchbox and waiting with bated breath. The moment her eyes locked onto him, they ignited with an unmistakable brilliance. She dashed toward him, cradling the breakfast like a treasure. "Jie Yusheng, I personally prepared this breakfast for you. Want to eat together?" Yusheng acted as if she were a mere ghost, stepping right past her without a glance. As he strode directly toward Shen Xiao, the two walked away side by side, sharing a low conversation and a faint knowing smile. Publicly humiliated, the girl who had been spoiled for a decade finally snapped. She gritted her teeth and with a violent swing of her arm, hurled the lunchbox onto the pavement with a sickening thud. Hearing the sudden crash, Yusheng's steady pace faltered for a brief second. Shen Xiao looked at him nervously, her voice wavering with a hint of anxiety. As she asked Ayu what's wrong, Yusheng remained silent for a heartbeat, then replied with a frigid, "It's nothing, let's go." Over the following month, Xuan recycled every trick she had used to chase other men, and unleashed them all on him with desperate fervor. Daily love letters, lavish bouquets, hand-knitted scarves, and countless accidental encounters. Jie Yusheng watched from the sidelines with cold detachment, waiting to see exactly how far her persistence would go. Sure enough, it didn't take long for Xiwan to start losing her nerve. He overheard her venting to her friends. "Maybe I should just give up. I abandoned my pursuit of Xu Zhoubai for him. Yet he's still a block of ice. He treats Xiao better than me. It's so unfair." "What a fraud," Yusheng muttered, his face darkening instantly, as a storm of dark emotion swirled in his eyes. Before long, rumors began to saturate the campus. The Shens had punished Xiwan for the sake of Xiao. The balance of power had shifted. Xiao was now the favorite. Consequently, Xiwan's temperament grew increasingly volatile. At school, even a distant glimpse of Shen Xiao would trigger a display of blatant, undisguised hatred. Xiwan began staying away from home entirely, loitering in rowdy bars, and drowning herself in booze. Xie Yusheng stared down at her. Stop drinking. Who the hell are you to control me? She violently swiped his hand away. Yusheng's eyes narrowed into slits, as he issued a cold reminder. I'm Xiao's friend, and you are her sister. I can't just... Before he could finish, Xiwan suddenly sprang onto her tiptoes, her slender arms winding around his neck like vines, locking onto his mouth. She forced a reckless, suffocating kiss upon him. A girl's delicate scent mingled with the sting of liquor, crashing over Yusheng like a tidal wave. He froze, instantly paralyzed, as his mind went completely blank. Once his senses finally snapped back, his large hand clamped around the back of her head, deepening the kiss until the bar's cacophony vanished. The entire world faded, leaving only their tangled breaths. Xiwan was kissed so hard she nearly choked. After her desperate strikes against his chest failed, she sank her teeth into him. Only when the metallic tang of blood filled their mouths did they finally break apart. With her cheeks flushed a deep crimson, Xiwan threw a provocative look at the figure behind Yusheng. She slowly flicked out her tongue, licking the blood from her stained lips. That smile was dazzling, arrogant, and utterly defiant. Yusheng turned his head to find Xiao standing there. His gaze turned skeletal and frigid in an instant, fist clenching until the bones creaked. He realized he'd been used as a pawn by Xiwan yet again. For a fleeting second, he was possessed by a dark urge to strangle her, but his cold rationality quickly regained control. He had finally learned the ultimate truth. If she could use him to strike at her enemies, he could pay her back in kind tenfold. He would drag her into the abyss with him. With Xiwan, constant flattery was useless, and pure coldness was equally ineffective. Precision. Only by mastering the art of manipulation could he lure her step by step into total submission. He would make her beg for mercy with clinical precision. Whenever she was on the verge of giving up, he would toss her a breadcrumb of false hope. When she was ostracized and broken by the Shen family, he would watch from the sidelines with cold indifference until he'd seen enough, only then offering his gentle, calculated comfort. Xiwan, you are a Shen. The same blood flows through your veins. They could never truly abandon you. He dangling a new impossible goal before her at just the right time. The future madam of the Z family must be refined, graceful, and a woman of impeccable virtue. To me, Xiao is the most fitting candidate. Predictably, the moment Xiwan heard those words, she dove headfirst into the snare he had laid out, sinking deeper into the abyss of his making. Inside his private office, he scrolled through the photos sent by the private investigator. He watched Xiwan laboring day and night to learn etiquette, her fingertips bloodied from the thorns of flower arranging, yet still gritting her teeth and refusing to quit. Xie Yusheng couldn't suppress a dark, mocking laugh, his chest vibrating with sinister amusement. Only then did he bother to reply to the photo Xiwan sent seeking his praise. Impressive, but still not enough. He intended to extract her pride inch by agonizing inch, forcing her to lose her very sense of self until she had no one to lean on and nowhere left to run. Finally, she would become a mere parasite clinging to him for survival, trapped under his absolute thumb, living a humble, wretched existence just to please him. When the transformed Shen Xiwan stood before him again, he once more brushed past her like she was nothing, taking Xiao's hand right in front of her eyes to announce their impending marriage. Seeing Xiwan's face drain of all color, an indescribable surge of sadistic pleasure washed over him. He expected her to spiral into a jealous frenzy, to do anything and everything to reclaim him, but Xiwan did nothing of the sort. She didn't scream or cry. She didn't beg or cling. Instead, as if suddenly waking from a nightmare, she began to deliberately distance herself from him, like a kite with a severed string. She gradually drifted far beyond his control. Xie Yusheng felt a gnawing unease, desperate to force everything back onto the right track. So he meticulously orchestrated a wedding day swap. The church was drowning in solemnity on that fateful day. Shen Shiyuan wore a wedding gown that wasn't meant for her, walking toward him with trembling, hesitant steps. Her eyes flickered with intense humiliation, yet were clouded with a desperate, lingering hope. The venomous mockery of the crowd followed her like a shadow. Xie Yusheng's lips curled into a glacial, mocking smirk as he finally took her cold hand in his, proclaiming his vows before the entire world. I, Xie Yusheng, take Shen Xiuan to be my wife, to honor and cherish for all eternity. His dark eyes bored into hers, resembling a predator admiring prey caught in a flawless web. Shen Xiuan, this is the only way for things to be truly fair. 3 years later, the Xu Manor was draped in festive lanterns and silk, buzzing with an electric high society energy. Luxury cars lined the entrance. As the elite arrived bearing lavish gifts for one reason, the news was undeniable. The true sovereign of the Shu family, Third Master Shu Heichao, had returned. Rumor had it he'd even brought back a delicate, frail child bride. Within the crowd, several socialites were whispering in the shadows. Tell me how on earth did the Shen family end up here too? Just a few years ago, the scandal of their adopted daughter hounding the real one to death sent the entire city into an absolute frenzy. I heard Shen Xiuan's final wish was to never be a Shen ghost, and to never be buried in a Z family grave. Yet that man slept with her corpse every single night, until the Zias finally forced him to cremate her. Even her ashes were scattered to the wind. If you ask me, Shen Xiuan's fate was nothing short of tragic. Shh, keep your voice down. If that madman from the Z family hears you, there will be hell to pay. These whispers drifted like invisible smoke into a young girl's ears. Draped in a sleek obsidian cocktail dress, I clutched my wine glass with a practiced ease, my posture radiating a lazy, effortless grace. My eyes were cold and indifferent, as if I were listening to a boring fairy tale that had nothing to do with me. I never imagined I'd be reborn as the Shu family's little foster bride. Yet I possess none of the original owner's memories. Luckily, I haven't had much contact with the Shu family yet, so no one has noticed anything unusual about me. I still can't wrap my head around one thing though. Why did the Shu family butler who came to collect me say that my name is also Shen Xiuan? I took a delicate sip of my wine, and just as I prepared to make my exit, I collided head-on with a broad, solid chest. I'm so sorry. I apologized instinctively, my voice laced with a faint intoxication, as I turned to walk away. Suddenly, my wrist was snatched with a crushing force, as if he intended to snap my bones right then and there. I spun around, only to lock eyes with a familiar, terrifying gaze. He was staring at me with a deathly intensity, whispering Shiyuan in a low, gravelly voice. His tone was heavy with an ocean of longing and raw agony, as if his voice had traveled through time itself, to strike directly at the core of my soul. My chest tightened with sudden dread, my eyes widening in shock, but I regained my composure in a heartbeat, flashing him a shallow, polite smile. Pardon me, but you've clearly mistaken me for someone else. Yet Xie Yusheng had absolutely no intention of letting go. His gaze was a vice locking onto me, as if he were trying to peel back my skin and see the truth. His voice was sharp with unwavering certainty. The way you're looking at me right now doesn't look like you're facing a stranger. Why are you panicking? The pain in my wrist from his grip was becoming unbearable, and my brows knitted together in a sharp scowl. Let go of me, I hissed with rising anger. Xie Yusheng remained completely unmoved, simply repeating his demand with stubborn fixation. Answer me. Pushed beyond my limit, I wound back and delivered a stinging slap across his face. The commotion instantly drew a crowd of onlookers. When Yuan and Chuchobai rushed through the throngs of people, my deepest apologies. He's had far too much to drink, and he's confusing you with someone from his past. When Yuan offered a practiced smiling apology, while Chuchobai's eyes remained fixed on me, after a moment of heavy silence, he gave a slight formal nod of acknowledgement. His gaze was heavy with deep scrutiny and suspicion. Xiuan, come here. A deep, magnetic voice cut through the dense crowd, resonating slowly and with absolute authority. The mere mention of that name sent a collective shiver through the room. I turned to see my nominal fiancé Shu Hechao, a man, draped in a perfectly tailored black overcoat, radiating an aura of profound, restrained darkness, unlike Xie Yusheng's detached and icy vibe. This man possessed a far more sophisticated and refined lethal edge. My emotions were a chaotic mess, yet I forced myself to walk toward him, my heart pounding with a mix of dread and uncertainty. I frantically searched my mind for any intel on Shu Hechao, a saint's words with a viper's heart, cold, ruthless, and elite, a master manipulator with terrifying depths, the type of monster who would dismantle his own uncle's lineage, and toss his own nephew into prison without batting an eye. Recalling Lin Shang's fate behind bars, the paralyzing fear I felt began to ebb away slightly. In a way, Shu Hechao had inadvertently avenged me. Standing nearby, Xie Yusheng saw me leaving, and instinctively surged forward to chase after me, only for Wen Yuan to violently wrench him back by the arm. You watch yourself. Think about where we are. While Wen Yuan hissed a frantic warning to Xie Yusheng, he shifted instantly into a hearty, cheerful shout. Third uncle, good to see you. Shujobai also called out with a restrained, respectful tone. Third uncle. Shu Hechao merely offered a curt, indifferent acknowledgement, before seizing my slender wrist and leading me away for the remainder of the gala. I remained glued to Shu Hechao's side, wearing a mask of perfectly curated, polite smiles. I did my best to ignore the scorching, obsessive gaze following my every move. Master Shu, regarding the South City Development Project. My proposal is hearing that familiar booming voice. A violent tremor ran through my entire body. Shen's parents were there wearing obsequious smiles as they buttered up Shu Hechao, having not seen them for years. It looked as though they had aged a decade in an instant. Father's once jet black hair was now heavily salted with silver, and mother had lost her opulent high society glow, looking worn down by a heavy sense of exhaustion. While I was dazed, the conversation suddenly shifted to me. And who might this be? Shu Hechao gently squeezed my hand, his lips curling into a subtle knowing smirk, as he responded with a blend of elegance and terrifying majesty. Meet my fiancée Shen Xiuan. Father and mother were visibly struck as if hit by a bolt of lightning. Mother's eyes welled up with tears in an instant. Seeing her break down, father's face flashed with panic, as he began to stammer an explanation. We are deeply sorry for the intrusion. This young lady shares a name with our late daughter. So he cut himself off, sensing the faux pas, stopping abruptly in his tracks. He offered a strained, awkward chuckle. My chest swirled with a mess of complicated emotions, bordering on uncontrollable mockery. So I hurriedly averted my gaze. Every subtle twitch was devoured by Xie Yusheng's watchful eyes nearby. Wan Yuan waved a hand in front of his face, teasing him playfully. Still staring, are we? Didn't we already clear this up? Though the names are identical, they aren't even remotely the same person. Yusheng's predatory gaze remained locked on Xiwan. He tracked her white-knuckled grip, and the way she anxiously bit her lower lip, before a sudden eerie smile touched his lips. His voice was barely a whisper, trembling with the desperate hope of a man reborn. Shouldn't I at least find out for myself? Wan Yuan was left utterly speechless. Suzhoubai looked as if he wanted to interject, but as he watched Xiwan's retreating figure, his grip on his wineglass tightened, and he remained shrouded in silence. As the gala finally drew to a close, I stood within the walls of the opulent villa, feeling the overwhelming presence of the man before me. My skin crawled with an unbearable restlessness. Su Hechao, keenly aware of my obvious distress, let a gentle, disarming smile grace his features, as he gave my cheek a playful pinch. Go on and get some sleep. It's been an exhausting day for you. I felt like a prisoner granted an unexpected pardon. After a quick formal goodbye, I bolted away like a startled rabbit. The assistant, witnessing the interaction, couldn't help but remark, Miss Shiyuan seems to have regained her old spark. Su Hichao's eyes trailed that graceful silhouette, his gaze as dark and unfathomable as spilled ink. This is how she was always meant to live, fearless and free. The assistant bowed with a knowing smile. Then congratulations, Master Zhu, on finally getting what you desired. The capital was already feeling the autumn chill, but after dressing up with meticulous care, I arrived at the spot where I'd agreed to meet my bestie Ning Wanwan, even though she already knew I was the same Shen Xiwan as before. Wanwan couldn't stop the tears from streaming down her face. Once she finished her cry, she reached out and pinched my cheek. Xiwan, you're still a total goddess, and you've even gotten younger. Talk about a total win. Now let me hear you call me big sister. Ning Wanwan acted as if she had to cram 3 years of gossip into one sitting. The moment I heard about your accident, I rushed back from abroad just in time to see Shen Xiao being hauled away in handcuffs. She actually conspired with those thugs to destroy you. She's serving a life sentence now. At this point, Ning Wanwan's blood began to boil. At first, your parents refused to believe she was the culprit. They were pulling every string to get her out of that mess. It wasn't until the police produced undeniable evidence that they finally woke up from that nightmare. Ever since then, your mother's mental state has completely deteriorated. She's constantly muttering your name under her breath. Your father has changed drastically too. He spends hours just staring into space in your old room. Once they learned about your final wishes, they tried to finalize your divorce from Xie Yusheng, but that man flat out refused to sign. He even dragged your body back to your marital home. The fallout between the families was beyond ugly. It only ended when the Xie family patriarch stepped in to stop the madness. Mentioning Yusheng, Ning Wanwan paused for a beat, glancing at me before asking Xiwan about Xie Yusheng. She knew better than anyone how much I had once adored him, and she was terrified that a spark of hope still flickered in my heart. I sensed her anxiety and gave her a reassuring smile. None of that has anything to do with me anymore. Wanwan caught the finality in my tone, and a radiant grin broke across her face. Exactly, it's got nothing to do with you. That whole cliche where everyone starts loving you only after you're dead and gone. I absolutely despise that crap. Ning Wanwan quickly pivoted to a new topic. We started catching up on my current situation, but when she found out my new fiancé was the legendary Shu Hechao, her mouth dropped open into a perfect O shape. Then her expression shifted to something far more complicated. What's up with that face? I couldn't help but probe her. Ning Wanwan glanced left and right to check the coast, leaning in to whisper cautiously, Xiwan, this Master Shu is top tier in terms of status and looks, but the industry rumors say he's never had a single scandal. Word is, he might be totally dysfunctional in bed. I paused the disturbing images I'd stumbled upon earlier flickering through my mind. Shu Hechao standing there, shirtless and imposing, with only a low-slung towel clinging to his waist. Water droplets had traced the deep-carved valleys of his abs. I swallowed hard, my throat suddenly dry. So what? I blurted awkwardly. If he's broken, he's broken. Our engagement is just a temporary arrangement anyway. It's not like his stamina concerns me. After we'd gossiped our fill, we went on a high-octane shopping spree. Just as we were heading to the next spot, a sudden roar of excitement erupted ahead. Look, it's the leads from The Other Side of Moonlight. Their chemistry is literally goals. It's been delayed for years. I can't believe it's finally hitting theaters. I heard it's based on CEO Xie and his late wife. He even personally supervised the script, changing the tragic ending into a happily ever after. My feet felt like they were nailed to the floor. I turned my gaze toward the source of the commotion. On a gargantuan movie poster towering nearby, the lead actor shared a gaze full of sickeningly sweet devotion. Ning Wanwan saw it too, letting out a scoff of pure, unadulterated rage. Are you kidding me? Jie Yusheng is such a psycho for faking this devotion? I remained silent, my eyes hardening into chips of ice. The very next day, Shen Xiuan arrived at her former partner media company. You, Director Lin, looked visibly taken aback. I skipped the pleasantries, slamming a handwritten letter of authorization onto the desk. I'm representing Shen Xiuan. I'm here to buy back the copyrights to The Other Side of Moonlight. A flicker of immense hesitation crossed Director Lin's face. Apologetically, he asked me to wait a moment. It wasn't long before Director Lin returned, but this time he wasn't alone. I lifted my gaze to look, and my expression instantly turned glacial. Director Lin offered a fawning apology. Miss, this is our CEO, Mr. Xie. Whatever business you have, you may discuss it directly with him. With that, he beat a hasty retreat. Xie Yusheng seemed quite pleased with his departure. He fixed his eyes on me, his voice low and carrying a hint of a smirk. Xiuan the first. A flash of pure sarcasm flickered in my eyes. Mr. Xie, we aren't close enough for that. Please mind your manners and speak formally. Yusheng didn't seem rushed at all. He sat down with a refined grace. I took a sharp deep breath, suppressing the inferno of rage burning inside me. I looked him dead in the eye to state my business. I am acting on behalf of the late Shen Xiuan. I'm here to reclaim the copyrights for The Other Side of Moonlight. Hearing this, Xie Yusheng reached out unhurriedly, rhythmically tapping his fingers against the mahogany desk. He curled his lips. I'm afraid that's impossible. Those copyrights belong to my wife. This masterpiece is the crystallization of the love she poured into our relationship. Our entire history is woven into every single word. He deliberately put a heavy, lingering emphasis on the word wife. As for your client, the information is a bit incomplete. Tell me, in what capacity exactly are you demanding these rights? Xie Yusheng's phoenix-like eyes narrowed slightly, staring at me with an unnerving stillness, refusing to let even a micro-expression escape his notice. His shameless, thick-skinned, and utterly rogue rhetoric pushed me over the edge. You two are already divorced. And how exactly would you know we were divorced? Xie Yusheng had been lying in wait for that specific slip of the tongue. I clenched my fist until my knuckles turned white. Slowly, my rationality began to claw its way back. I exhaled a long, steadying breath. It's not like I live under a rock. Literally everyone knows that Shen Xiuan is dead. Technically and legally speaking, your marital bond was severed a long time ago. Yusheng let out a nonchalant, airy "oh" before slowly and deliberately drawling out, "We never divorced. I never laid a pen to those papers. Furthermore, I conducted a ghost marriage ceremony with her. So whether she is among the living or the dead, she remains my one and only wife." I stood there in utter disbelief, my entire body trembling with a surge of fury. My eyes burned, turning a stinging red. Xie Yusheng slowly extended his hand, reaching out as if to brush away my tears like he used to. I swiped his hand away with pure loathing, hurling my words at him without a shred of mercy. Xie Yusheng, you truly are repulsive. Seeing that words were useless, I didn't want to linger in his presence for another second. I snatched up my bag, ready to storm out. Behind me, Xie Yusheng's voice rang out once more. Xiuan, I can return the copyrights to you, but only if you agree to meet me in 3 days. Shen Xiuan didn't bother to look back. After her footsteps faltered for a mere heartbeat, she continued her cold exit. The night was as dark as ink, thick, heavy, and suffocating. Yusheng returned to his secluded Yueshan villa. As he prepared to head upstairs, he paused for a moment, issuing a low, commanding instruction. Prepare all of Madame's favorite dishes for the next few days. I want the freshest Guillardot oysters from France, flown in by air today. Remember to pair them with fresh lemon juice, with just a subtle hint of honey. No carrots in the side dishes, and absolutely no chili in any of the courses. With that, he ascended the stairs, leaving a trail of terrified servants behind him. The staff exchanged horrified glances, their fear impossible to mask. Some felt their knees go weak from pure dread. Ever since the madam passed away, Mr. Z had transformed into a complete madman. He spared no expense, hiring specialists to painstakingly preserve her remains daily. Before heading to the office each morning, he personally selected her makeup and her attire. New arrivals from every luxury brand flooded the house like water. Someone once joked that, "Is Mr. Xie starting a new romance?" people whispered. But Xie Yusheng merely offered a chilling smile, saying, "My wife has quite the fiery temperament, and she's always had a weakness for these pretty trinkets. I have to keep her pampered and happy." The nosy questioner immediately shut their mouth in terror. Even after his wife's remains were finally forced into cremation, Mr. Xie sought out a mysterious feng shui master to overhaul the entire layout of the villa. Now the courtyard is choked with locust trees. A heavy, suffocatingly eerie aura clings to the air. No sane person would plant locust trees at their home. They are notorious for attracting ghosts. Just thinking about it makes one's skin crawl. If it weren't for the astronomical salary he pays, no one would dare set foot in this place. 3 days later, inside a private suite at the Jiangnan waterfront, Xie Yusheng appeared clad in a sleek black silk shirt. His collar was slightly unbuttoned, sleeves rolled up with calculated nonchalance, as he unhurriedly arranged the roses that Shi Yuan used to adore so much. He radiated a cold, repressed aura of abstinence, making him seem like an untouchable sacred entity. It was exactly the look Shi Yuan used to obsess over. When I arrived and witnessed this display, my eyes remained completely devoid of emotion. I took my seat and got straight to the point. State your conditions. Xie Yusheng was in no rush to respond. Instead, he composedly reached for the teapot and poured a cup for me. His movements slow, deliberate, and graceful. As the wisps of steam curled into the air, he looked at me, his lips curving into a smirk. I want to know why you're so desperate for this copyright. That is none of your business. Xie Yusheng's gaze darkened significantly as he fired off several more probing questions. My patience began to evaporate. Raising my voice, I snapped, Mr. Xie, can we finally talk business? Of course. No sooner had the words left his lips than his entire demeanor shifted. He stared at me, his voice dropping to a gravelly baritone. I love you. My body stiffened for a fraction of a second. But Yusheng continued his confession. I knew you were foolish, frivolous, and empty-headed. And yet I loved you. I knew your schemes and your shallow ambitions. You were materialistic and vulgar. And yet I loved you. I knew you were second-rate at best. And yet I loved you anyway. In The Other Side of Moonlight, when the male lead confesses to the heroine, he quotes those famous lines from The Painted Veil. Does that scene feel familiar to you? Before I could even voice a response, Xie Yusheng seemed to drift into a memory, a tender, nostalgic smile overflowing from his phoenix eyes. In reality, that is exactly how I confessed to my own wife. Back then, we had just recently married. She had likely reached her limit with my coldness, and was harboring thoughts of a divorce. In our dimly lit bedroom, she lay beside me, hesitating to speak time and time again. I saw right through her, reaching for the painted veil to recite those classic lines. The moment my voice filled the room, she became instantly remarkably still. After a long silence, she finally whispered softly, "Are you reading a book?" Yeah, she was clearly fishing for a conversation, her voice laced with a desperate, subtle need to please. Even if her reputation is trashed, and everyone criticizes her, could someone still fall in love with her? Yes, his dark eyes grew heavy with focus, hearing that simple confirmation. Her eyes ignited with a sudden brilliant light. She was completely revitalized. She cupped his face and pressed a kiss to his lips. Then, could you love me? I'll prove it to you, she promised. I'm not the person the rumors say I am. I didn't steal the man Xiao liked. I truly deeply love you. I can be good too. He didn't say a single word, his grip on her slender waist tightening with a sudden force. Behind her back, where she couldn't see, he was trembling with silent laughter. There was never any need to prove my worth, because every shred of filth attached to my name was meticulously woven and draped over me by his very own hands. A victim desperately pleading her innocence to her tormentor? Isn't that just the peak of irony? God, I was so incredibly easy to deceive back then. Xie Yusheng. I didn't come here to listen to your pathetic nostalgia. My voice, sharp with indignation, jolted him back to the present. The moment I attempted to stand up, a violent wave of dizziness crashed over me. My vision fractured into total darkness, just before I succumbed to the void. A pair of powerful, steady hands caught my collapsing frame. When my eyes finally fluttered open again, I was greeted by an opulently vintage decor. Soft alabaster curtains swayed ghost-like in the breeze. My gaze fell upon a colossal wedding portrait hanging on the wall. In the photo, I was radiating a brilliant, breathtaking smile. A paralyzing chill crawled up my spine. My pupils dilated in sheer terror. I scrambled out of bed in a frantic panic, not even pausing to find my shoes. Barefoot and breathless, I bolted toward the exit. I hadn't gone far before slamming into a rock-solid chest. A low, dark chuckle vibrated from above my head. Why are you running? You personally decorated every inch of this place. Weren't you absolutely obsessed with this room? My entire body began to tremble uncontrollably. I raised my voice, screaming, I told you already. I am not Shen Shiwan. You've got the wrong person. I am Shu Hechao's fiancé. Think about your own life before you lay another finger on me. Xie Yusheng's eyes narrowed into dangerous slits. A haunting, airy laugh escaped his throat as he reached out to pinch her nose playfully. He offered no verbal response, merely forcing her toward the dining table with an iron grip. Do you like it? There's no chili, just the way you like. I felt like I was sitting on a bed of needles, my eyes frantically scanning for any possible escape route. Yusheng saw right through my desperate thoughts and issued a soft, chilling reminder. As you said yourself, your current identity is quite prestigious, so just stay and keep me company for a while, and then I'll let you go. I was dying to take everything on this table and shatter it against that hypocritical face of his. I sucked in a sharp breath, digging my nails into my palms, just to force myself to stay composed. Provoking Xie Yusheng right now wouldn't do me any favors. Seeing me settle down, Yusheng's smirk only widened. He peeled a shrimp for me, but I tossed it aside, my voice cold and flat. I'm allergic. Yusheng froze, then scooped up a spoonful of truffle risotto. I recall this being your absolute favorite. I dumped the contents into the trash bin, Sorry, it looks way too greasy. He picked up a silver fork, speared a piece of foie gras, and held it to my lips. I jerked my head to the side. Too fishy. The air in the room suddenly went stagnant. I remembered that Yusheng's biggest trigger was being publicly defied, given my blatant disrespect. He should be losing his mind with impatience any second now. Just as I thought that, a sharp pain shot through my jaw. Yusheng clamped his hand around my head, violently wrenching me toward him. Suddenly, a mouthful of stinging liquor was forced into my throat. I was paralyzed with terror, my mind going completely blank. As I instinctively fought back with everything I had, I hammered my fists against him, kicking and clawing like a cornered animal. Yet Xie Yusheng didn't even flinch. Instead, his grip tightened with agonizing force, as if he wanted to crush me into his very soul. My vision began to blur and double. Just as I was on the verge of suffocating, the crushing pressure finally began to ease, like a fish gasping on dry land. I finally caught a desperate lungful of air, breathing in ragged, heavy gulps. First, my eyes burned with a furious red. I hoisted my hand to deliver a stinging slap to his face. Xie Yusheng snatched my wrist, his eyes swirling with dark, turbulent emotions, his voice sounding dangerously hoarse. I've never been a patient man, except when it comes to my wife. Since you refuse to admit you're her, don't even dream of enjoying her privileges. Under the dim glow of the chandelier, Xie Yusheng's cold, chiseled face bore several angry red scratches from my nails. His lip had been bitten raw, and a crimson bead of blood slowly oozed out, mixing with the remnants of red wine and smudged lipstick. It created a scene that was both bewitching and deadly, like a fallen deity descending from the heavens, sinister yet breathtakingly beautiful. The air remained stagnant for what felt like an eternity, before Xie Yusheng finally released me. He ordered the servants to bring an identical set of dishes, forcing my rigid body back into the seat, acting as if that violent outburst never happened. He picked up another shrimp and began to deshell it. Once finished, he held it out to me. "Try it," he commanded. I remained silent for a few agonizing seconds, but eventually picked up my chopsticks and swallowed it. A faint, satisfied smile finally touched his lips. Right at that moment, a soft, nauseatingly familiar voice echoed through the room. "Hubby Xuan is so hungry." I followed the sound to the phone, sitting right in front of Xie Yusheng. On the glowing screen, there it was, a virtual AI avatar that looked exactly like the old me, whining and acting cute. "Hubby, why are you ignoring Xiwan?" A violent shiver surged through my entire body, and my stomach churned in protest. I was hit by a wave of absolute revulsion. A hand landed softly on my back, stroking me with a slow, rhythmic motion, in a mock attempt to soothe me. "Is it disgusting?" Yusheng's voice hissed in my ear, dripping with a layer of cruel irony. "Didn't you also commission a custom doll that looked just like me?" Seeing my face turn as white as a sheet, a ghost of a smirk played on his lips. He reached out to pinch my cheek, offering a piece of information like a merciful reward. "Shiyuan, did you really think you found that perfect 3D model by luck? Every vocal inflection was meticulously perfected by me line by line. In truth, that thing was a gift I created specifically for you." My pupils contracted in sheer terror, as I stared at him in utter disbelief. No wonder when I was commissioning that doll, even though I only provided a single candid photo of him, the craftsman managed to achieve such an uncanny likeness. My heart hammered violently against my ribs, a chilling realization dawning on me. The man known as Xie Yusheng? Perhaps I never truly knew him at all. The voice from the phone persisted, grating on my nerves. "Master, why are you ignoring Shiyuan?" Finally snapped, I lunged forward and silenced it. This scene was a haunting echo of years ago, except the roles had been cruelly reversed. Xie Yusheng gazed at me with a frightening stillness, for a long time before he finally reached out to terminate the audio on his device. The room plummeted into a tomb-like silence, save for my own ragged, frantic gasps echoing in the air. "When exactly are you letting me go?" Soon Xie Yusheng replied in a low, gravelly tone. "I need a specific time." I glared directly into his eyes, demanding an answer once more. Xie Yusheng remained shrouded in silence. He seized my hand, forcing his fingers to interlock firmly with mine. As he led me toward the basement, reaching the threshold, I recoiled instinctively, refusing to take another step into the darkness. "I won't hurt you. After all, you've found yourself quite a powerful protector." Xie Yusheng's icy voice dripped with bitter sarcasm. The moment the door swung open, the overhead lights flickered to life. As soon as I processed what was inside, the air was sucked right out of my lungs. Within the cavernous space, massive screens were flashing endless photos of me, captured in every possible pose, from every stage of my life. Some were moments I didn't even remember myself. Yusheng unlocked a pristine glass display case. "Do you still remember any of these?" I looked and my mind exploded with a deafening hum. The case was stuffed with countless pink envelopes, though the ink has faded with time. I recognized them instantly, the love letters I once wrote for him, along with every single gift I had ever gifted him. These things weren't all of these burned to ashes. Xie Yusheng caught the overwhelming confusion in my eyes. He chuckled softly. "I kept everything you ever gave me. These are the originals. What you saw destroyed were merely replicas. Boom! My entire world collapsed into a frozen abyss. The blood drained from my face as my heart turned to ice. No wonder even after my rebirth, I was still trapped in the identity of Shen Shiyuan. Tears welled up, escaping my control, and began to carve bitter paths down my cheeks. Xie Yusheng began tenderly brushing away my tears, while incessantly whispering about our innocent, youthful past. He spoke endlessly about our life after the wedding. He claimed he had yearned to marry me long ago. He claimed that even before I started chasing him, he had been dying to kiss me. He even said he loved seeing me beg for his affection like a stray. I felt like I was hearing everything, yet hearing absolutely nothing at all. I stood there paralyzed and rigid, like a hollow puppet whose soul had been surgically removed, until a sudden searing heat grazed my neck as he leaned in. He lowered his head, kissing my throat with a twisted devotion. His touch was so agonizingly gentle, as if he were handling a fragile, priceless artifact. Does it still hurt here? Shiwan, I'm so sorry. I shouldn't have let my pride get in the way back then, or refused to come looking for you. He was drowning in his own late regrets. Regret that when I was kidnapped and fighting for my life, he never bothered to come for me. He simply thought I was throwing another tantrum, testing the limits of his legendary patience. It should have been a moment of intimate tenderness, a scene of soft, lingering affection between lovers. But every inch he touched felt like a viper crawling over my skin. Beyond the sheer revulsion, there was only soul-crushing disgust. Yusheng finally released his grip, leading me toward a massive pane of reinforced glass. A wedding gown as white and pure as fresh snow stood on display under the ethereal glow of warm lights. It looked like something out of a haunting dream. The glass door glided open with a soft hum, and Jie Yusheng grabbed my hand. He gently traced the intricate fabric of the wedding gown. Shiwan, I designed every inch of this dress myself. Part of me was desperate to see you wear it, while the other part felt you were unworthy. Yusheng cupped my face in his trembling hands, uttering words of surrender as if finally admitting defeat. Shiyuan, I actually love you. My mind was already a swirling void of darkness, and those words were the final straw that broke me. The mental fortress I had painstakingly built instantly shattered. You're absolutely repulsive. Xie Yusheng, you make my skin crawl. I truly regret ever wasting a single heartbeat on you. I violently shoved him away, lunging at the pristine gown and tearing it to shreds. The sound of ripping fabric echoed like gunshots in the air. The sight of the destruction turned Yusheng's eyes bloodshot. His knuckles turned white as he clenched his fist. But hearing me finally admit that I was indeed Shen Shiwan, his long dead heart began to pulse with a manic rhythm. He reached out, trying to soothe my frantic state. Let's just start over, please. I'll be the one to love you this time, okay? I don't love you. Get out, I screamed until my voice cracked. My throat was raw, my words a ragged hiss. Somehow one of my barbs struck a nerve deep within him. His gaze turned feral in an instant, resembling a beast pushed beyond the brink of sanity. Veins bulged across his forehead, neck, and hands, throbbing as if they were about to burst through his skin. He let out a guttural, teeth-gritting roar. Then who do you love? Is it Shu Hechao or maybe Shu Chobai? Which man have you set your sights on now? Just as I felt certain he was going to strangle me, Xie Yusheng suddenly seemed to snap back to reality. He abruptly yanked his hands away. He pulled me into a crushing embrace, his voice a frantic, never-ending loop. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I hate it when you say things like that. I summoned every last ounce of my strength to push him off. Xie Yusheng, you are seriously mentally ill. At the mention of being ill, Xie Yusheng's entire body went rigid for a moment. Then he slowly drew a blade from behind his back. The cold blade shimmered with a lethal glint under the light. My pupils contracted in sheer terror as I instinctively recoiled, backing away. Xie Yusheng slowly dropped to his knees before me, forcing the handle of the knife into my hand. He looked up, his dark eyes unfathomable, like a desperate broken disciple, gazing upon his only deity. Shiwan, I know your heart is overflowing with hatred for me. I realize I owe you a life. His voice was low, gravelly, and ragged, dripping with an endless, terrifying obsession. Let me help you release that rage. Will you? Stab me wherever you want, just forgive me, please. Before the words even left his lips, the sound of steel slicing through flesh echoed, followed by a sharp, searing pain in his shoulder. He let out a muffled groan of agony. The hand I held the knife with trembled violently, but the pure loathing in my eyes was completely unconcealed. You think I don't have the nerve to do it? Xie Yusheng actually laughed, looking at me with a gaze full of twisted pride and a sickening sense of doting affection. No, I just think you aren't being ruthless enough. With that, he lunged forward and clamped his hand over mine, violently plunging the blade deeper into his own body. Then he slowly wrenched it out, blood splattering everywhere. You're absolutely insane. I shrieked in total horror. Xie Yusheng was deaf to my scream, clutching my hand with an iron grip as he repeated the gruesome act over and over again. Warm metallic blood sprayed across my face. My mind went completely blank with shock as Xie Yusheng guided my hand, pressing the tip of the knife directly against his heart. I finally reached my breaking point. and screamed at the top of my lungs. Stop it! Are you certain? Xie Yusheng reached out to smear the crimson droplets on my cheek, his eyes dancing with a smile I couldn't possibly fathom. At that exact moment, with a deafening crash, the heavy doors were violently kicked open. A chaotic thunder of footsteps erupted, as countless figures flooded into the room. A dark silhouette, moving with the speed of a lightning strike, charged in, and caught my swaying, fragile body just in time. Xiwan, are you okay? Answer me. Hearing that familiar, grounding voice, the tension keeping me upright finally snapped, and I plunged into unconsciousness. Zhu Hechao swept me up into a bridal carry, his entire aura instantly radiating a bone-chilling frost. Yusheng took a violent kick to the chest, staggering back several paces from the impact. He slowly tilted his head up, wiping a smear of crimson from his lip with his thumb, as a deranged chuckle spilled from his dark eyes. You're begging for death, Zhu Hechao. Hechao's eyes, cold and desolate, were webbed with bloodshot fury. Just as he prepared to lunge again, Wen Yuan and the others rushed onto the scene. Third uncle, calm down, stay rational. We need to get Xiwan to the hospital first. Zhu Hechao's knuckles turned a ghostly white from the strain. But he eventually turned and carried me out of that hellhole. Inside a top-tier private suite, Xie Yusheng lay motionless on the hospital bed, while the doctors worked to bind his gruesome wounds, staring at the sheer amount of soaked blood. Wen Yuan's expression was a mask of sheer disbelief. Yusheng, have you completely lost your mind? A faint, triumphant smirk ghosted across Yusheng's pale face. She couldn't do it. She couldn't bring herself to kill me. Xu Zhoubai's brow furrowed into a deep, heavy scowl. You've pushed this way too far. Xie Yusheng shot him a sideways glance and curled his lip. What's the matter? Does it hurt your heart to see her like that? Xu Zhoubai stared him down with unwavering intensity. She is a human being, not some trophy for you to toy with. This reckless psychological warfare you're playing, it's going to leave her with scars that may never heal. As the tension in the room reached a volatile breaking point, Wen Yuan jumped in to defuse the ticking time bomb. Zhoubai, how is Xiwan doing on her end? Have you been to see her yet? Xu Zhoubai's breathing grew heavy and controlled. Her emotions are dangerously unstable, he said deeply. The doctors had to administer a heavy sedative. My third uncle has already summoned a top psychiatrist for her. As he spoke, his gaze drifted pointedly towards Xie Yusheng. Xu Zhoubai didn't linger for much longer. Once the room had cleared out, Wen Yuan wore an expression of deep hesitation. Spit it out already. Xie Yusheng's voice was a lowy tone. It low, gravelly baritone. Wen Yuan gritted his teeth, looking as if he were about to make a fateful decision. I know you did this to force her to release that pent-up resentment, but you've also effectively poisoned any chance of a future together. Yusheng, even if she truly is Shen Xuan, it's time to finally let her go. Yusheng's hand spasmed, making it impossible to tell if the agony was from his wounds or his heart. Every single breath felt like a jagged blade twisting in his chest. When no response came after a long silence, Wen Yuan looked up, under the flickering hospital light. He saw the glisten of tears at the edge of the man's eyes. That once imposing frame was trembling visibly, resembling a withered dying tree devoid of any soul. 1 month later, the capital was fully gripped by the biting chill of early winter. The Zi family patriarch personally dispatched his men, with a sincere plea for me to visit the ancestral manor. Standing before the gates of the CA residence, I tilted my head back, studying the bold, masterful calligraphy on the plaque, and felt a momentary daze. I couldn't even remember the last time I'd stepped foot here. As the icy wind howled around us, Xu Hechao reached out with his elegant, steady fingers to tuck away a stray lock of my hair. Are you afraid? He asked, his voice warm and soothing. I knew exactly what he was referring to. I gave him a faint, composed smile. I'm not. As I entered the main hall, the first thing I saw was a kneeling figure. It was Xie Yusheng. From the moment I crossed the threshold, his gaze was locked onto me, refusing to waver. The patriarch's clouded eyes scanned Shen Xuan's face, letting out a heavy, weary sigh. Miss Shen, I've invited you here today to force this unfilial grandson of mine to give you justice. The elder Zi's voice then turned into a thunderous roar. Bring out the disciplinary whip. Soon a heavy leather lash was presented. I merely spared it a cold, indifferent glance before shifting my gaze away. I continued my conversation with Elder Z. By the time I prepared to leave, Xie Yusheng had endured an untold number of lashes. He was collapsed, half kneeling on the floor, his clothes torn to ribbons, and his back a roadmap of bloody welts. As I moved to pass him by, a trembling, blood-stained hand snatched the hem of my skirt. Every pair of eyes in the room snapped toward us. You absolute scoundrel! What do you think you're doing now? Elder Z roared in a fit of rage. But Xie Yusheng remained deaf to the world, slowly lifting his battered head, his eyes overflowing with desperate raw supplication. Xiwan, can you finally find it in you to forgive me? Xu Hechao stood nearby, his expression rigid and tense, his fists clenching instinctively at his sides. I looked down at Xie Yusheng, and suddenly a soft melodic laugh escaped my lips. Xie Yushen was momentarily dazed by that radiant smile. But before a grin could even form on his own face, my voice cut through the air, cool and indifferent. I enunciated every single syllable. There is no such thing as forgiveness between us, Yusheng. If you truly feel even a shred of remorse toward me, then spend the rest of your life staying out of my sight. Right at that precise moment, the season's first snow began to fall. Delicate flakes drifted lazily from the sky. Xie Yusheng looked as if he had just heard his own death sentence. A bone-chilling frost seemed to seize him, surging from the crown of his head down to his toes. Upon hearing my icy response, the taut string in Chu Hechao's mind finally relaxed. He took a plush white shawl and draped it over my shoulders. It's snowing. Let's go home. His voice was gentle and grounding. Yusheng lay slumped on the ground, dazed for an eternity before laughing. His chest heaved violently with each breath, until a mouthful of dark blood sprayed from his lips. He reached up to wipe it away, his eyes fixed obsessively on Shiyuan's receding back. Even after all that, you won't soften your heart. You've truly become ruthless. Over the months that followed, he never appeared in my line of sight again. I felt as if I had finally unshackled myself from the past, embracing the exhilarating freedom of a new life. Aside from grinding out scripts, I spent my time living it up with Ning Wanwan. But my carefree streak didn't last long. As the wedding date with Shu Hichao was officially set, in a cozy cafe, I rested my chin on my hand while stirring my coffee, looking completely lost in thought. After listening to my long-winded venting, Ning Wanwan fed me a spoonful of tiramisu and cut straight to the chase. Xiwan, if you were truly against this marriage, you wouldn't be sitting here feeling so conflicted. The sweet, rich flavor melted on my tongue, leaving me momentarily stunned. Ning Wanwan continued her interrogation. Don't tell me Xie Yusheng gave you a permanent phobia of marriage. You need to realize that you aren't that fragile Shen Xiwan from the past anymore. At this point, Ning Wanwan leaned in closer. Look, I have to be real with you. Even though Lord Shu is top-tier eye candy, don't the rumors say he's dysfunctional down there? Maybe you should reconsider. I froze, a deep crimson flush rapidly creeping up my face. Ning Wanwan instantly caught my suspicious reaction. Xiyuan, your face is telling a whole different story. Spill it. What happened? I cleared my throat awkwardly, and under the intense pressure of her gaze, I confessed everything. It started at a very ordinary gala. I was bored out of my mind at the party, so I joined some socialites to learn mixology. When it was time to leave, I handed my masterpiece cocktail to Shu Hechao to try. But shortly after arriving home, chaos erupted. When Assistant Gao frantically led me to Shu Hechao's suite, my mind was still a complete blur. From behind the door, I could hear heavy, suppressed groans. A pungent scent of blood began to seep into the hallway. Beads of sweat rolled down Assistant Gao's forehead, as if he were about to take a fatal gamble. Miss Shen, even if I'm punished for this later, I'll accept the consequences. That drink you mixed tonight was spiked with something filthy. And after the third master drank it, the master is already carrying severe injuries. If we try to pump his stomach now, given his current physical condition, I'm afraid his body simply won't hold up. Miss Shen, the only woman allowed near him, is you. Assistant Gao's implication couldn't have been clearer. I was incredibly hesitant, but I knew I was partially responsible for tonight's disaster. Taking a sharp, deep breath, I finally pushed the door open. Assistant Gao let out a breath of relief, locking the door behind me the moment I stepped inside. He then cleared the entire floor of all servants. The room was plunged into oppressive darkness. I cautiously pried the blade away from the man's grip, my voice trembling with a hint of fear. Third Master, let me help you. Shu Hechao slowly lifted his head, a flicker of lucidity returning to his bloodshot eyes. Do you even realize what you're saying? Before my gaze fully landed on him, I had only caught a frantic glimpse, not having the chance to look closely. Now I saw that his body was a map of scars, an overlapping mess of old and new wounds. I sucked in a lungful of air. I know, and I'm willing. Before I could even finish my sentence, the man's searing, feverish body crushed down upon me. That night, I cried until my throat went completely hoarse. I clawed and scratched at him in desperation, but nothing could make that man stop. By the time the first light of dawn broke, only one thought remained in my fading consciousness, and that was that Shu Hechao is absolutely nothing like the rumors suggest. He's more than capable. After hearing my confession, the usually worldly Ning Wanwan fell into a stunned silence, as if a realization suddenly clicked. No wonder you ghosted me for days. Ning Wanwan arched an eyebrow, a mischievous, teasing smirk spreading across her face. Turns out you literally couldn't get out of bed. Look, what's done is done. Everything already happened. Shu Hechao is loaded powerful, and possesses a face so divine it's practically a death sentence. His hardware and software are both elite tier. Plus, it's not like you're totally indifferent to him. So Xiwan, what exactly are you stressing about? I bit my lip, feeling a wave of uncertainty. I just find it strange. Strange how I locked eyes with her. Do you actually think he's in love with me? How could he possibly not be? Just look at the way he gazes at you. He might act like a refined, polite gentleman, but my sharp eyes can see through the facade. That look in his eyes, tisk tisk tisk, It's like a starving wolf eyeing a helpless little rabbit, just waiting for the perfect moment to devour you whole. Ning Wanwan gestured vividly as she spoke. Then, regaining her composure, she shrugged. But I shouldn't even have to tell you this. Xuan, you know it deep down. Xu Hechao has never even tried to hide his love for you. My frown deepened even further. That's exactly what's so bizarre. Nobody just falls that intensely in love with a stranger for no reason. Besides, he never asks about my past with Xie Yusheng. It's like he doesn't care at all. Or he's not even curious. Hearing my logic, Ning Wanwan's expression suddenly turned serious as well. You're right. That reaction is definitely not normal. I frustratedly ruffled my hair. Night began to fall, and the city lights flickered to life. Tonight was the Shu family's monthly reunion dinner. As Shu Hechao's official fiancé, I was naturally expected to attend. Inside the car, Hechao clearly sensed my sour mood. I kept my eyes glued to my phone, refusing to utter a single word to him. What's wrong? He pulled me into his embrace as he spoke, nonchalantly sliding the phone out of my grip. He took my slender hand in his, idly playing with my fingers. Ever since that night, the intimacy between us had become second nature. I suddenly looked at him with a dead serious expression. Su Hechao, are you just obsessed with my body? Su Hechao seemed to fall silent for a heartbeat, and then he gave a slow, deliberate nod. A low escaped his throat. My face instantly darkened at his answer. I shoved him away and waited to get out of the car. Su Hechao stared at his now empty palm, his narrow eyes flickering with a dark intensity. Third master saying that is a total taboo for women. Assistant Gao, having witnessed everything, couldn't help but speak up. Ever since he was punished for taking liberties last time, he had become much more cautious with his words. He pulled up a saved thread of dating tips and handed it to Shu Hechao. Once we stepped out of the vehicle, even though I was still annoyed with Shu Hechao, I had to maintain the proper facade in front of the Shu family. Over the past few weeks, I had learned quite a bit about the Shu family's internal drama. Shu Hechao was an illegitimate son, and the rest of the Shu clan despised him to varying degrees. Yet because of his immense power and status, they were forced to wear fake smiles and flatter him to his face. I still didn't want him to lose face in public. After all, he's still technically my man for now. During the dinner, as Shu Hechao placed food on my plate, one of his hands suddenly captured mine. He leaned in and whispered into my ear, using a voice meant only for the two of us. It's not just your body. I love every single thing about you. Tonight, I'm completely at your command. I felt a mix of irritation and amusement. Of course, that's the only thing on his mind. I tried to shake off his hand, but Shu Hechao gripped me tighter, pulling me closer. I raised my stiletto heel and stomped down with all my might. To my surprise, his expression didn't flicker at all. Instead, beside us, Shu Joubai's wine glass slipped from his hand, shattering on the floor with a sharp, piercing crack. Everyone's attention immediately snapped to Shu Joubai. What happened? Shu Joubai lowered his gaze, his voice sounding hoarse. It's nothing. My heart skipped a beat as I realized I had stomped on the wrong person. I went deathly silent in an instant. As soon as dinner concluded, I made an excuse and headed for the back garden. The evening's chilling breeze swept across my face. Yet the burning friction in my heart didn't subside one bit. My mind was a chaotic mess of paranoid thoughts. Shu Hechao is so many years older than me. Is it even possible he's never truly loved anyone else? Treating me so well from the very first moment we met. Yeah. Could it be he has some hidden white moonlight muse in his heart? I instantly recalled the trashy novels Ning Wanwan always rants about. The long-lost true love returns, and the poor substitute gets her kidneys harvested, or her womb ripped out. The more I spiraled, the more agitated I became. Lost in thought, I accidentally collided with someone. I looked up and found myself staring at Shu Joubai. Recalling that awkward blunder at the dinner table, I tried to act as if nothing had happened, out of sheer politeness. I gave him a stiff, subtle nod of acknowledgement. Just as I was about to brush past him, Shu Joubai suddenly reached out his hand and caught me in a firm grip. Do you no longer love Yusheng? It had been an eternity since I last heard that name. Hearing it so abruptly left me momentarily dazed. And why on earth should I still love him? So you've already fallen for my third uncle this quickly. Shu Joubai's voice dropped to a low, icy tone. What does that have to do with you? The frustration in my chest surged into a cold, sharp sneer. I violently shook off his hand and made a swift exit. Birds of a feather really do flock together, and people are judged by the company they keep. Yusheng's friends are all clearly dysfunctional in their own way. Shu Joubai watched the woman's retreating silhouette, slowly closing his eyes in the shadows. His phone began to vibrate insistently. He snapped his eyes open. It was a message from Yusheng. The moment he processed the content of the text, his gaze turned dangerously murky and unreadable. Once I retreated back to my room, I couldn't resist venting everything to Ning Wanwan before I could even finish my rant. A pair of large hands snatched the phone right out of my grasp. Recognizing exactly who it was, I stubbornly turned my head away, refusing to acknowledge his existence. Shu Hechao patiently forced my face back toward him. His voice was velvety and gentle. I know I've messed up in some way and caused you to be this upset, But no matter what the issue is, please just talk to me, okay? There shouldn't be any misunderstandings between us. I absolutely couldn't resist this side of him so tender and sincere. It made me want to completely unravel him. Taking a sharp breath, I decided to stop beating around the bush. Let's just call off the engagement. At those words, Shu Hechao's fingers tightened their grip, and his gaze darkened into something predatory. Give me a reason, utterly oblivious to the danger I was in. I began dumping every single thought I had suppressed in my heart. The storm clouds on Shu Hechao's face suddenly cleared like sunlight piercing through a thick fog, and he actually let out a low chuckle. I was both furious and flustered. I shoved him with all my might. What exactly is so funny? Shu Hechao captured my hands, pressing them firmly against his heart. His deep, searing gaze traced every detail of my face. I have never loved anyone else, from the very beginning until now. There has only ever been one person in my heart, my little lady. I was ready to snap back with a sarcastic remark, but I froze the second I heard that nickname. Something in the back of my mind felt like it was about to surface, yet I couldn't quite grasp the memory. Are you... Chow. He gave me the answer I was looking for. The memories of the past suddenly came rushing back when I was 10 years old. My parents wanted to boost my academic performance, so they brought home a scholarship student they were sponsoring. He was meant to be my live-in study partner. I still remember that exact moment. I was standing at the top of the stairs, looking down imperiously at the painfully thin boy before me. He wore a shirt that had been washed until it was nearly white. His posture was impeccably straight, his expression cool and aloof, with a voice cracked by the onset of puberty, sounding a bit rough. He called me little lady. I assumed he was just a human surveillance camera sent by my parents. Naturally, I never gave him a warm welcome. So every time he tried to fulfill his duty and tutor me, I play wicked pranks just to amuse myself. If I'm not entertained, don't even dream of me studying. I'm in a bad mood today. Wear this dress while you tutor me, and maybe I'll actually finish my homework. I watched with glee as the boy struggled to suppress his rage, forcing himself to endure my ridiculous demands. It was hilarious to me. He was far more entertaining than any of my toys. Over time, I gradually started to tolerate his presence. I dragged him everywhere. At a party, a friend teased me Shiwan. Is it true you're raising a child bridegroom? What child bridegroom? I was ready to snap back with a sharp denial. But then I looked at him standing there in the middle of the crowd, allowing everyone to mock him without a word. His frame looking so fragile and thin. The boy just kept his eyes lowered in silence. I hesitated, thinking he looked quite pitiful. Is your little groom obedient at least? I officially added Zhu Hechao to my list of inner circle people. I warned him never to play with Shen Xiao. Treat her like she's invisible, you hear me? He was incredibly loyal. Unlike the others, he never wavered. Even when Shen Xiao put on her act and shed crocodile tears, he refused to give her the time of the day. I was beyond satisfied. If he had failed that test, I would have tossed him aside instantly. By the time I hit my rebellious teenage years, Su Hechao had already reached adulthood. They say every guy keeps dirty little secrets on his phone. Overwhelmed by curiosity, I managed to swipe his phone in secret, only to find it was boringly empty. So my wicked side took over, and I covertly downloaded some spicy content onto his device. Brother Hechao, why won't this educational video play? Help me fix it. I handed him the phone with a mischievous, devilish smirk. Su Hechao narrowed his eyes at me, clearly questioning the credibility of my words. After a long pause, he finally took the phone. The second he hit play, scandalous moans erupted from the speakers. His ears turned a violent shade of crimson instantly. The blush spread from his earlobes down to his neck, and finally engulfed his entire face. In a panicked frenzy, he practically hurled the phone away, watching his hopelessly innocent reaction. I doubled over, howling with laughter, until my eyes curved into mischievous crescents. The following morning, I dragged myself out of bed early, only to catch him stepping out clutching his bedsheets. When he spotted me, his already awkward expression soured even further. The realization hit me instantly, and my laughter became even more unbridled. I tilted my head playfully, my eyes sparkling as I teased, "Are you mad?" But he reacted like a cat whose tail had been stepped on, abruptly snapping his head away, as if he couldn't even stand the sight of me. I reached out and forced his face back toward mine, grinning as I offered, "I'll buy you a brand new phone to make up for it, okay?" Unexpectedly, he totally lost his cool. He shoved me away with such force that I nearly lost my balance and tumbled. Fine then, I wasn't going to waste my breath coddling him. It wasn't like he wouldn't eventually get over it himself. Sure enough, before long, everything between us returned to our usual rhythm. From that point on, it was as if I discovered a new playground. I constantly found creative ways to mess with him. I lived for the sight of the veins throbbing in his forehead, knowing he was powerless to actually do anything about it. Later, I intentionally put some distance between us, because I had set my sights on chasing Xie Yusheng. I couldn't risk giving Shen Xiao any leverage against me. But slaving over a homemade lunch every day was exhausting, and I certainly wasn't that selfless. So naturally, I ordered Hechao to make them instead. Who could have predicted his reaction? When he realized those bento boxes were for my confession to Yusheng, he actually smashed the lunch I had ordered him to make. Following that explosive outburst, we plunged into a bitter Cold War. Unless he swallowed his pride and apologized first, there was no way in hell I was going to speak to him. As the days dragged into weeks, neither of us dared to break the suffocating stalemate. Until one day Hichao walked up to me with a hauntingly calm face to tell me he was leaving for good. In a fit of rage, I threw the necklace he'd spent months saving for on the floor. Then get lost. Just looking at you makes my skin crawl. Xu Hichao stared at it for an eternity before finally retrieving the necklace from the dirt. He turned away and step by step vanished from my world completely. Suddenly, a shock of icy cold metal against my skin snapped my drifting consciousness back to reality. I glanced down at my chest, and there it was, the very same necklace I had once cruelly discarded. The butterfly design was breathtakingly exquisite. Xu Hichao's dark pupils reflected my stunned and bewildered face. His voice was as soothing as a soft spring breeze. After all these long years, I finally managed to give it to you. He had waited for this day for far too long. So long that he feared this opportunity would never come in this lifetime. My emotions were a chaotic, tangled mess. I had 1,000 questions burning in my mind. How did you know that I'm actually Shen Xiuan? Xu Hichao didn't offer an immediate explanation. Instead, he leaned down and placed a tender, feather-like kiss on my forehead. I'll tell you everything later. When I recounted this entire saga to Ning Wanwan, her facial expressions were as wild as a high-speed roller coaster. Xiuan, you seriously have a natural talent for being a total heartbreaker. Just look at the mountain of emotional debt you've piled up around you. It really proves the old saying, that what goes around comes around eventually. Even with a brand new face, you still have to pay back your karmic debts to me. Ning Wanwan gave me a playful nudge. So I guess you can finally trust Xu Hichao now, right? I let out a stubborn, haughty huff. I suppose he's barely passable. My wedding to Xu Hichao was an affair of absolute grandeur, sending shockwaves of gossip through the entire city. I sat poised before the vanity adorned in a magnificent traditional bridal crown. My hair was swept up into an elegant high bun, embellished with an array of shimmering gold hairpins. My lips were painted a deep, vivid crimson. The emeralds and pearls cascading from my crown only served to make my radiant beauty even more striking. Hearing the door creak open, I began to whine with a playful pout. One, this phoenix crown is incredibly heavy. The moment the words left my lips, a pair of long, slender hands came to rest upon my shoulders, and then slowly, rhythmically toyed with my earring. My entire body went rigid. Looking up through the reflection in the mirror, I saw the face of Shuchobai, giving me a hauntingly tender smile. I had been kidnapped. This marks the 3rd day of my captivity. I stare at the 2 men standing before me, lacking even the strength to curse them out. Shuchobai holds a bowl of steaming hot porridge, gently blowing on it to cool it down, before bringing the spoon to my lips. You haven't eaten a single bite in 3 days. Please just have a little. I jerked my head away in defiance. The next second, I was forcibly wrenched back. Xie Yusheng's tone was bone-chillingly cold. Are you itching for another nutrient injection? My eyes flickered with a hint of calculation, and I slowly opened my mouth to comply. I am absolutely certain that Xie Yusheng has lost his mind. Reasoning with him is a complete waste of breath. My only glimmer of hope lies with Shuchobai. On the 5th day, when I finally drifted awake, I realized I had been moved to yet another unfamiliar location. From behind the door, the muffled sounds of an argument drifted in. They were fighting over me, with a sharp creak. The door was thrust open. Shuchobai walked in carrying a tray of food. He prepared to feed me just as he did every day. I looked him dead in the eye and spoke softly. Shuchobai, you're actually in love with me, aren't you? Shuchobai froze for a fleeting moment, before replying bluntly, is it really that hard to tell? Suddenly, I let out a sharp laugh, my face a mask of pure unadulterated mockery. What's so funny? Shuchobai stared at me, his nerves stretched to the breaking point. My eyes remained cold as my cherry-red lips enunciated every single syllable. It's just that I don't feel a thing for you. I've loved Xie Yusheng with all my heart. I've fallen deeply for Xu Hichao, but I have never ever loved you. Truth be told, I never even noticed you existed. With a deafening crash, the bowl in Shuchobai's hand shattered against the floor, spraying food and shards everywhere. His eyes were instantly webbed with bloodshot fury as he reached out and violently throttled my neck. My face flushed a painful purple as I struggled for air. Yet my eyes held nothing but a provocative, mocking glint. Go on, choke the life out of me. Go ahead, just end me right now. Sujobai's hand trembled violently, before he slowly, reluctantly let go. My chest heaved as I gasped for air. You're deliberately provoking me. You actually want to die, don't you? I massaged my throat, which throbbed with raw pain, as my voice cracked and choked with tears. I don't want to die. I want to live my life. Xie Yusheng, he already destroyed me once. I refused to let him ruin me. For a second time, I grabbed his hand with a desperate grip, clinging to him like a final fraying lifeline. Shujobai, please, I want to live. Night fell once again, and the room was bathed in a dim, sickly yellow glow. When Yusheng arrived to bring me my meal, I acted perfectly submissive. I ate whatever he fed me without a single word. Yu Sheng's lips curled into a mocking, playful smirk. Why so obedient all of a sudden? What kind of wicked scheme are you cooking up? My eyes instantly welled up with tears. Hubby, what did you just call me? Xie Yusheng's fingers trembled uncontrollably in an instant. Hubby, I whispered sweetly once more, leaning in to gently nuzzle against his palm. Like a docile kitten, I kept my voice soft and airy, every syllable dripping with a desperate need to please. I finally realized the truth. I'm destined to be with you anyway, so I'm done fighting it. But I can't stand Shuzhoubai. I never liked him back then, and I don't now. Don't let him come near me anymore, okay? I never want to see his face again. Xie Yusheng didn't say yes, nor did he say no. He simply pulled me into a crushing embrace, rhythmically patting my back with a gentle touch, as he whispered a low haunting murmur. Good girl. A faint smirk ghosted across my lips. I knew that for Yusheng. This was a silent agreement. I reached out and tightly hugged him back, but my gaze was fixed on Shuzhoubai, who stood by the door. On the night I was supposed to be moved, Yusheng still had no intention of unshackling my ankles, just as everything was finally in place for his plan. Xie Yusheng suddenly felt the strength drained from his limbs. In a flash of realization, he sensed the betrayal, and whipped his head around to find Shuzhoubai, who should have been drugged unconscious, leisurely stepping out from the depths of the shadows. You set me up? Xie Yusheng spat the words through gritted teeth. It's only fair, isn't it? You never truly intended to share her with me anyway. Shuzhoubai's cold retort sliced through the air. His eyes never once straying toward the fallen Yusheng. Instead, his gaze was locked intensely onto me, as he slowly closed the distance, making my heart instantly leap into my throat. I instinctively recoiled, pulling away from him. I had no clue what twisted thoughts were racing through his mind. Don't you dare lay a single finger on her. Xie Yusheng was so consumed by rage that his eyes became completely bloodshot, roaring like a wild-cornered beast. Shuzhoubai remained utterly deaf to his screams, marching straight up to me, and firmly cupping my head in his hands. He leaned down, inching toward the lush lips he had long craved. But at the very second of impact, he froze in a kiss full of restraint and suppression, landed softly upon my forehead instead. Then he slowly knelt down before me, and finally unlocked the heavy chains from around my ankles. Go, he whispered softly. At that exact moment, the piercing wail of police sirens erupted outside, shattering the stillness of the midnight sky. Xie Yusheng was momentarily stunned, before he broke into a manic laughter. His shoulders shook with every jagged breath, and his eyes brimmed with bitter burning tears. Idiots, we were all played like fools by her. It was unclear if he was mocking Shuzhoubai, or merely laughing at his own pathetic self. The second I felt the shackles fall away, I didn't hesitate for even a heartbeat, stumbling blindly toward the exit as fast as I could. Behind me, the desperate soul-crushing screams of Xie Yusheng echoed. I didn't dare look back. The doors were kicked open, and a swarm of silhouettes flooded into my vision. Yet, I only had eyes for that one towering, familiar figure. A faint relieved smile touched my lips, and I sprinted toward him without a single doubt. As the moonlight cascaded into the room, Shu Hechao finally caught his entire world in his arms.